Chapter 1422. Li Qingshan was currently focused on fending off the heavenly tribulation, so he was completely unaware of all of this. His scarlet eyes stared at the lightning sword that moved through the dark clouds. He was not knowledgeable enough to recognize what it was, but he instinctively felt a great threat from it. Thunder and lightning interweaved between the sea and the sky, and even the smallest aftershock was as thick as a water bucket. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts exploded together, and the blazing light shone through the waves and the bottom of the sea, presenting an incomparably magnificent scene. At the center of the lightning was Li Qingshan. Rumble! The deafening roar shattered the sea, but in an instant it gave people an illusion of tranquility. The misty white mist was dazzling, and it surrounded Li Qingshan's figure as he fought against the heavenly tribulation, blurring the boundary between gods and demons. In a trance, Wan Yaozhu seemed to see him sitting on a throne high in the clouds, controlling the lightning, and his divine might was like a prison. Who exactly are you? Or, rather, what exactly are you? Li Qingshan's demonic body seemed to be unable to withstand such a terrifying heavenly tribulation. He staggered and half knelt in the sea, lowering his proud head, but the lightning sword flew over in an instant, slashing at his head. Roar! Li Qingshan raised his head and roared, ferocious and violent. Waves rose, strong winds surged, and the tiger's roar shook the heaven and earth. The tiger's roar stopped the lightning sword's momentum, and the lightning became more and more intense, vowing not to stop until Li Qingshan's head was cut off. And in the sky full of tribulation clouds, new lightning gathered, and even thousands of flickering lightning balls fell. Wan Yaozhu's heart instantly jumped, and for a moment she couldn't care less about Li Qingshan's identity and race. She was ready to act at any time. She came to help protect him, and everything had to wait until the heavenly tribulation was over. Otherwise, if he died here, what meaning would there be? But in such a dangerous situation, she really doubted whether she could save him. Absorb! Li Qingshan stretched his ape arms. His left hand formed a cage, and he used the ape demon's innate magical ability to freeze the lightning sword in the void. He punched again, and the void cracked, and the lightning sword flew back. Receiving the recoil, he fell backward. Twisting his body, he threw himself into the sea and transformed into a giant turtle. The tribulation lightning continuously bombarded the tortoise shell, but it was as if light was reflected on a mirror, bouncing back and shining brightly. Wan Yaozhu was also stunned by his endless divine abilities. Were ordinary demons so powerful? No wonder he wasn't afraid of Shen Yushu at all. If it was a fair fight, how could Shen Yushu be his opponent? However, it seemed that he didn't need to do anything for the time being. Inside the turtle shell, Li Qingshan chuckled. Sometimes it felt good to be a coward. However, between the sea and the sky, a bolt of lightning crisscrossed, leaving behind a complex and profound afterimage. The thunder sword absorbed almost all the reflected thunderbolts and became larger and more blazing, its shape becoming clearer and sharper. Li Qingshan thought, sure enough, a mighty heavenly tribulation that tests all cultivators can't be countered so easily. However, he was still very relaxed. If the greatest threat of the tribulation this time was the lightning sword, then the lightning sword would not be able to stop it. That wasn't enough to kill him. At this moment, the nascent soul in his body moved slightly. It revealed an evil smile. It was both Li Qingshan's appearance and Li Qingshan's smile, but it seemed to condense all the malice in his heart. There was a problem with the operation of the miniature world, and layers of demonic thoughts rolled in. Li Qingshan's mind was distracted. Lightning flashed, and the thunder sword cut off his head, which rolled into the sea. In midair, he cursed, "Fuck!" Boom! The head smashed into the sea, creating a huge wave, and sank to the bottom. Li Qingshan's body could still move. He hurriedly reached out with both hands. Lightning flashed, crisscrossing, and his hands broke in midair, falling into the sea with a loud bang. His majestic body was torn apart like a landslide, falling into the sea piece by piece. Qingshan! Wan Yaozhu suddenly opened her eyes wide. He was clearly majestic just a moment ago, but in the next moment, he was dismembered. Such a shocking change was hard to accept. Did he die just like that? However, the tribulation thunder did not stop. Lightning flashed, and she saw another Li Qingshan standing in the void. His body was translucent, and his long hair was loose. His black robe fluttered, and his eyes flashed with an evil red light. He smiled hideously, revealing his mouth full of sharp teeth. The tribulation thunder also targeted him. His figure was erratic and indistinct, almost instinctively using some kind of extremely brilliant escape technique, shuttling through the lightning. Even the thunder sword could not easily lock onto him. What is that? Wan Yaozhu was very uncertain. She had never heard of such a strange and evil nascent soul. It was like the legendary heavenly devil. However, heavenly devils would only appear when a cultivator became an immortal or a god. At that time, the inner demons would be external, and the 5-een would burn, opening the mysterious latch of heaven and earth. Heavenly devils would descend, and they would use endless magic to prevent people from achieving Tao. It was an existence even more dangerous than the tribulation thunder. Could it be the 5-een devils? In order to survive the 6 heavenly tribulations, she had studied this in depth. When the yang spirit transformed into the primordial spirit, there would be the inner demons and the mind would be agitated, giving birth to the 5-een devils. However, they were still the same type of inner demons. Based on the cultivator's body, they did not have a physical body, so they would not have such a manifestation. Moreover, whether it was the 5-een devils or the heavenly devils, they were not the treatment that cultivators who had not become immortals should have. Otherwise, not many people could become immortals. Legend had it that all heavenly devils were the incarnations of the great Freedom Sky Devil Lord. If they were to deal with a small nascent soul cultivator, there would be no way to deal with them, and they would definitely die. Great Freedom Sky, Book of Freedom. Could that be his nascent soul? The demon infant stared at the turbulent sea and smiled hideously. Don't play dead. I know you are still alive. Get up. He is still alive. Wan Yaozhu was happy, but she was also full of doubts. She stared at the demon infant in the sky. Could that be his true appearance? A phoenix cry pierced through the sky, and the sea was dyed in a magnificent color, as if it was burning. The phoenix spread its wings, broke through the sea, and soared into the sky. Li Qingshan looked at the demon infant in surprise. He felt like he was talking to himself just now, but he could not control it. It was as if he was talking in his sleep. This feeling was too strange. He never knew that cultivating the Book of Freedom would produce such a strange thing. An evil, crazy mirror clone that had its own consciousness. You are the fucking thing. The demon infant cursed and flew over. Li Qingshan reached out and grabbed, but the nascent soul fused into his palm. Immediately after, the lightning sword came slashing over, and the small world circulation suddenly became sluggish. This time, Li Qingshan was prepared. He flapped his wings and turned, brushing past the lightning. There was still a terrible sword wound in front of him, from his right shoulder to his left waist. It gave off a burnt smell, and even the phoenix's powerful life force could not heal it. The demon infant laughed loudly. How pathetic! You want to ascend to the 9 heavens with just this bit of ability? You might as well die here. This laughter and tone were exactly the same as Li Qingshan's. In fact, it was even more like Li Qingshan's than Li Qingshan's. Nascent soul self-destruct. He could not care less about getting injured. He made up his mind and chose to self-destruct his nascent soul. Chapter 1423. Boom. Against the backdrop of the low clouds and interweaving lightning, Li Qingshan and the demonic infant faced off against each other in the air. It was as if they were looking at a distorted mirror. Because it was the body of a fiend god, the demonic infant seemed more like Li Qingshan. Its words seemed more like it was talking to itself. Before it could refute, lightning flashed behind it, and the lightning sword pierced through the clouds from the sea. Amidst the violent boom, Li Qingshan flapped his wings and dodged in a sorry state. Feathers fell from the sky, and another terrible wound appeared on his body. Boom, 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 boom. The blazing thunder sword kept piercing back and forth, leaving behind crisscrossing arcs of lightning that cut the void into pieces. Li Qingshan was locked down and couldn't resist at all. The circulation of the small world was sometimes fast and sometimes slow. The demonic qi was chaotic and uncontrollable, falling into chaos under the influence of the demonic infant. He felt as if his body had been extended and a wandering limb had grown out. The sensation of this limb was transmitted even faster, so fast that his consciousness couldn't react. A slight change in one part would affect the entire body, and he couldn't control it at all. It was like a voodoo doll that was tailor-made for him and could move freely. It was constantly cursing him. In an instant, sword wounds crisscrossed on his body, and white bones could be seen. His right arm was severed at the elbow, and his spine was exposed in the wound at his waist. He knelt in the sea, with the surging seawater up to his chest. What was worse was that the wings behind him were completely torn apart by the lightning, making it difficult for him to dodge the following attacks. The situation took a turn for the worse as the will of death closed in. The demonic infant sneered coldly, "Look at your pathetic appearance, saying that a mere 4 heavenly tribulations can destroy you above the 9 heavens. Why aren't you kneeling down and accepting your fate?" "Shut up," Li Qingshan roared angrily. "Ha! You can't even protect yourself now. So how can you control me?" The lightning sword gathered lightning and attacked Li Qingshan continuously. The demonic infant didn't even need to dodge the lightning now. She simply placed her hands on her waist and raised her nose to the sky, looking extremely arrogant. Wan Yaozhu couldn't understand. Even the 5 demons could only use the 5 great worries of emotion, perception, thought, action, and knowledge to disturb the minds of cultivators. It didn't have any substance, nor did it have any consciousness. It was even more impossible for it to quarrel with a cultivator like this. Furthermore, to a certain extent, this demonic infant was a demonic infant. He was just like Li Qingshan. Boom. Another strike landed on Li Qingshan's back. If he had not used the spirit turtle's ability in time, he would have almost been cleaved in half. The tremendous force still slammed him into the ocean viciously. How could such a thing happen? It must be that bastard spirit sovereign Guihai, who schemed against me. There's something wrong with the unfettered heavenly book he gave me. All right. Through the deep, rippling seawater, the demonic infant's cheers could be heard clearly. "Li Qingshan, you don't want me to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. He's just a mere mortal. He was lucky enough to obtain a lousy cultivation technique. Do you really think that you can defeat demon god Qiongqi and ascend to the 9 heavens?" Wan Yaozhu frowned slightly. It wasn't strange for cultivators of the Tao of the mortal realm to aim above the 9 heavens, but what was up with demon god Qiongqi? Why would a mere nascent soul cultivator be involved with such a monster? TSK, abandoning your wife and slaughtering the innocent. You even dare to talk about the nine heavens time and time again. Even I feel ashamed for you. Fortunately, you can't reach there. Even if you really reach the nine heavens, you'll still be a disgrace. You might as well just die here and save yourself a lot of trouble. The demonic infant's mocking laughter reverberated amidst the rolling thunder. It was completely unaffected by the thunder. Li Qingshan was extremely furious. He finally experienced the feelings of his opponents, whom he mocked. He wanted nothing more than to tear that thing into pieces. However, the angrier he got, the more vicious the demonic infant's words became. The rolling evil words were like thousands of arrows piercing his heart. It was even more unbearable than tribulation lightning. He decided to seal his eyes and ears, wanting to see and hear nothing. However, the evil words became clearer and clearer. It was as if it came from the bottom of his heart. A thought flashed through his mind. He immediately understood that he was wrong. That thing was neither evil nor sentient, because it was his own voice. He struggled to get up, but the lightning sword hung high in the sky. Lightning flickered and instantly pierced through the sea and sky, pinning him to the bottom of the sea. The seawater exploded, and huge waves rose to the sky. The demonic infant stretched out 2 fingers. It was a gesture that symbolized victory from Li Qingshan's previous life. It smiled and said, "The second time, and the last time." When Li Qingshan underwent nirvanic rebirth again, he slowly crawled out of the sea. I was wondering what it was. So it's just some distracting thoughts. Is the greatest enemy me? How old-fashioned. You finally realized it, idiot. But it's too late. The demonic infant pointed to the sky. Just now, the lightning sword had lost its target and was hanging above his head. It slowly rotated, gathering lightning and restoring its radiance. Not far away, above Li Qingshan's head, rolling tribulation clouds gathered. Lightning interweaved within them, faintly forming the shape of a blade. The second tribulation lightning weapon. Ruan Yaoshu was dumbfounded. Was this really the 4th heavenly tribulation? Li Qingshan had committed a crime against the heavens. He had inner demons haunting him and tribulation lightning weapon on the outside. Even an Ean divinity cultivator would not be able to escape death. You're the idiot. If I didn't realize it, how would you have? Forget it. It's too stupid to quarrel with yourself. Li Qingshan shook his head. On this path of the 9 heavens, his number 1 opponent was himself. Fear, doubt, guilt, helplessness, anger. Day and night, they burned incessantly like fire. It was just that these distracting thoughts were usually suppressed by his incomparably strong willpower. But at this critical juncture of transcending the 4th heavenly tribulation, not only was he advancing from demon king to demon emperor, his nascent soul was also transforming into a divinity. The nascent soul cultivated by the unfettered heavenly book was different from others. The Ean divinity formed was closer to an Ean demon. It was more adept at bewitching people and hiding invisibly. It possessed all kinds of strange and unfathomable methods. It could easily crush cultivators of the same realm like Shun Yushu who were not adept at fighting and had weak willpower. However, the price was that it was very easy to go berserk, just like at this moment. And this was not a coincidence. It was inevitable. If cultivating the unfettered heavenly book of nature was compatible with the way of nature, it could reduce the difficulty of transcending the tribulation. But the effect of the unfettered heavenly book was the complete opposite. It allowed cultivators to experience what it meant to be overflowing with 5 Ean and the attack of inner demons during the process of transcending the tribulation. The demonic infant said, "You're finished. You're finished too." Li Qingshan looked up at the lightning blade that was gradually taking shape and muttered to himself, "If you didn't say it, I really wouldn't have noticed it. Do you want to destroy yourself? The demonic infant was the embryonic form of an demon. Everything he said was his thoughts, just like the uncontrollable negative emotions in a mortal's heart. When the layers of distracting thoughts materialized, all kinds of emotions would have nowhere to hide. Among them, the deepest intent and the most terrifying emotion was the urge to destroy oneself. Therefore, the demonic infant wanted to make an enemy out of him and kill him. Only by completely denying his own existence and turning everything into nothingness could he completely let go of his burdens and not have to walk on with such difficulty. How laughable was the so-called path of the 9 heavens just to seek death. The demonic infant said numbly, "This is your fate, and also my fate." With a boom, the lightning blade took shape and the lightning sword whistled. The killing intent of heaven and earth condensed into this blade and sword. Who could withstand it? Chapter 14:24. The 2 tribulation thunders gathered a sky full of lightning. A moment of silence appeared between the sea and the sky, leaving only the sound of strong winds and surging waves. Wan Yaozhu looked up silently, feeling a sense of helplessness. No one could survive in such a situation. Even if it was him, the result of being attacked by the tribulation thunders was certain to be annihilated, and his soul scattered. No one could save him. She could not help but feel lost. Did I come all the way here just to see how he dies? Li Qingshan seemed to be unaware of the desperate situation he was in. He looked at the demon infant in the sky and laughed at his weak self. His expression was extremely similar to the demon infant's just now appearance. When he smiled, the demon infant's expression gradually became numb, and it repeated numbly, "I'm dead. I'm dead." It was as if a broken voodoo doll could not forget the inscribed curse. "Yes, I'm dead," Li Qingshan muttered to himself. "If I'm not dead, why would I take this path?" Summer insects cannot talk about ice, and a young year cannot be understood. A mortal's lifespan was 100 years, and it was rare for a cultivator to live for 1,000 years. As for more than 10,000 years, it was an extravagant hope even for a cultivator. But in this boundless world, what did 1,000 years count for? Who didn't find it hard to escape death? This was the deepest fear of all living beings, the most ancient curse. Li Qingshan had died once, so he understood this fear more than anyone else. After all, he had lived a mediocre life, full of boredom and boredom. It was only at the moment of death that he suddenly realized, "So I can't live forever." He did not hate the impermanence, and did not regret the shortness of time. He was afraid that he had never lived according to his own will. It was this fear that spurred him on in this life, and it gave him this invincible courage. Since it was difficult to live an ignoble life, why not live happily? Since he was fated to die, he must die a worthy death. He placed his right fist on his chest, and his heart pounded. "Don't worry, I will fulfill your wish. But not today, not here." Rumble! The combination of sword and saber descended from the sky. Countless bolts of lightning interweaved in the middle, connecting them into one. In the beginning, they descended very slowly, appearing extremely dignified. They firmly locked onto Li Qingshan's body, will, heart, and soul. There was no longer any possibility of dodging. It was like an irresistible fate. No, this was an irresistible fate. Amidst the flashing lightning, the demonic infant roared, "Die, die." Li Qingshan frowned. He felt like it was not just the miniature world in his body. Even his body became somewhat uncontrollable. He clenched his fists and arched his back. The muscles all over his body bulged, and his growl seemed to come from the depths of the earth. Activating the pocket dimension with all his strength, earth, fire, wind, water, space, ox, tiger, turtle, phoenix, and ape the pocket dimension began to revolve faster and faster. The speed at which the thunder sword fell also increased. Wan Yaozhu could not help but widen her eyes. Ox Demon sinks in the mud. The illusion of the ox demon suddenly appeared behind him, as though it was fighting an invisible enemy. He suddenly took a step forward, like a puppet that had broken free from a thread, and was rooted to the ground. Spirit turtle suppresses the seas, omens of good and bad. He took another step, and the surging ocean suddenly became as smooth as a mirror, reflecting the flickering thunder sword and saber in the tribulation clouds, as well as his unmoving figure and scarlet eyes. Tiger Demon refines bones. Frenzy! He swung his fist as hard as he could, and the thread that connected his arm to it snapped loudly. He roared at the sky, his voice piercing through the clouds. His killing intent was like the wind. Phoenix's rebirth, undying heart. He suddenly unfurled his wings, and they were beautifully reflected in the ocean. He flapped his wings, ready to take flight. At the same time, the circulation of the miniature world reached the limit, close to collapse. However, it continued to accelerate, preferring destruction over being restrained. The demonic infant's voice became sharper and more urgent. Die, die, die. Li Qingshan raised his head and smiled resplendently. The miniature world exploded loudly, and the demonic infant's voice came to a halt. It broke free of the final shackles, and dazzling light burst out of its body, competing with the thunder sword and saber in the sky. He leapt up with all his might, flapping his wings and taking flight. The thunder sword and saber spun rapidly, dragging long arcs of electricity behind them as they hurtled down like a blazing meteor. Ape Demon grabbing the moon. Emptiness. The illusion of the Ape Demon appeared, and Li Qingshan's arms expanded rapidly. He grabbed the thunder sword and saber, wanting to seize fate. The moment he collided with fate, an incomparably brilliant light surged, shining on the tranquil ocean. The brilliant colors dazzled even Wan Yaozhu. A deafening roar shook her young spirit, and it was as if she was no longer in the mortal world. In an instant, Li Qingshan was fiercely pressed down, falling into the boundless ocean. The light around his body dimmed, and his eyes were melted by the lightning, leaving only a pair of empty holes. The phoenix's wings cracked inch by inch, and feathers scattered all over the sky. Meanwhile, his internal organs, flesh, and bones were being melted by the light he burned. However, he didn't feel any pain or fear, only the ecstasy of living. It turned into a hysterical roar as he stubbornly resisted fate. Even if his throat and tongue were melted by the light, it couldn't be reduced in the slightest. At this moment, his nascent soul returned to his body, entering the chaotic world that was like an explosive furnace. He laughed arrogantly, resisting the sword and saber, shouldering fate, and soaring into the sky. The sword and saber went straight to his palm, instantly piercing through his arms and disintegrating inch by inch. He clearly felt that as long as the two swords and sabers converged in his body, it would be the most complete destruction. Even the phoenix's nirvana would not be able to save him. Under the threat of death and fear, his will to survive was clearer and firmer than ever. Qilin steps pity the common world. The dark green light spread along his arms and wrapped around the fierce thunder sword and saber. Although it was only for a short moment, he suddenly collided his arms. The thunder sword and saber collided violently, and at the same time, all the power contained in his body erupted. Boom! The light shone through the sea and the sky, sweeping away the tribulation clouds. The seawater was peeled away layer by layer, revealing the dry and cracked seabed. The footprints he left behind could be clearly seen, but his figure melted in the endless light. Wan Yaozhu's figure appeared, and she subconsciously raised her hand to block her eyes. She almost forgot that she was in the state of her yang spirit being out of her body. Under the light, she had no choice but to fly back. This power was enough to destroy her yang spirit. After an unknown period of time, she came to her senses and put down her arm. The light had disappeared, and the thick darkness filled the air. There were no clouds for thousands of miles, and the sky was full of stars. The wind and waves were calm, as if nothing had happened. Could it be that the yang spirit instantly flew to the place where Li Qingshan was going through the tribulation? The world was empty, and the figure fighting against fate was nowhere to be seen. She couldn't help but call out softly, "Qingshan!" It was as if she was afraid of disturbing someone. There was no answer. She felt an inexplicable sadness in her heart, so sad that she almost cried. "Who's calling me? Great, you're still alive." Wan Yaozhu was pleasantly surprised. She saw Li Qingshan floating up from the sea. "Senior sister, Wan, why are you here?" Li Qingshan was lying on the surface of the sea, unable to even move a finger. Wan Yaozhu appeared in his field of vision from the top of his head, and her face was very unfriendly. "You owe me an explanation." Chapter 14:25. With a splash, Li Qingshan was pulled out of the sea. Wan Yaozhu grabbed Li Qingshan's clothes tightly. Li Qingshan was surprised. He didn't expect her to have such a side. It was probably because she was in the state of yang spirit. She was not bound by the physical body, so her emotions were difficult to control. His nascent soul had suddenly turned into a demon because of this. But thinking about it this way, he felt that Spirit Master Gui Hai was deceiving him. If he hadn't cultivated the 9 transformations of demons and gods, it would have been 100 times more dangerous. The nascent soul was not as simple as turning into a demon infant to be his enemy. He had directly turned into a demon and lost control of everything. For ordinary nascent soul cultivators, the nascent soul was the condensation of strength and will. Losing the nascent soul meant losing everything. This book of freedom, which no one had cultivated before, was too dangerous. It was not easy for him to be a guinea pig. It was hard to say how much malice Spirit Master Gui Hai had, but fortunately he was not an ordinary guinea pig. Just as he was lost in his thoughts, he felt his body tense up. The dark green ribbon behind Wan Yaozhu tightly wrapped around his body like a spirit snake. Li Qingshan looked innocent. "What did I do? Why did you sneak into the Wanxiang sect? What did I do wrong to you? Why did you lie to me?" Wan Yaozhu's voice trembled slightly. It was unknown whether she was angry or sad, or maybe both. "No one believes you. Jiu also advised me to stay away from you. Because of you, eldest senior sister, and I lost our temper. You actually, calm down. Li Qingshan had no strength to resist now, but facing an angry young spirit cultivator, he did not feel afraid at all. Instead, he was inexplicably touched. "I'm going to kill you." Wan Yaozhu's eyes shone with green light. Her hair moved without any wind. Her voice revealed an inhuman power echoing between the sea and the sky. It made Li Qingshan feel like he was facing a heavenly tribulation. Even if she was not good at fighting, she was still a young spirit cultivator. Besides, was cultivating the Book of Nature really not good at fighting? Then kill me. Li Qingshan closed his eyes. He felt that the aura was getting stronger and stronger, almost swallowing him up. That was not the murderous aura of a living creature. Instead, it was the indifference and heartlessness of heaven and earth are heartless, treating all living things as straw dogs. However, he could clearly feel anger from it, an anger that should not be there. As expected, a moment later, his body relaxed and the ribbon loosened. The light on her body gradually disappeared, and she turned around with her back, facing him. Go! Li Qingshan admired her slender and graceful figure from behind. He smiled and said, Then I'll return to the Wanxiang sect first. Monsters can't stay in the Wanxiang sect. Don't think that I will hide it for you. Wan Yaozhu arrogantly raised her head. Li Qingshan thought for a moment. Not even mounts. Scram! Li Qingshan did not dare to joke anymore. Even a rabbit would bite when cornered. Not long ago, he was kicked by a rabbit. However, after some consideration, he had come up with a perfect excuse. Senior Sister Wan, don't be angry. I'm not a monster, and I've never lied to you. You still dare to say that? Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? Wan Yaozhu clenched her teeth. I heard that the Wanxiang sect has a true dragon scripture. Cultivators can activate the bloodline of a true dragon and turn into a true dragon. Are they also monsters? That's not the same. Don't tell me that look of yours was also cultivated. Of course. Have you ever seen such a strange monster? Wan Yaozhu pondered. That appearance and aura, no matter how she looked at it, was that of a great monster. However, thinking about it carefully, the bloodline was too chaotic. Li Qingshan walked in front of her and looked straight into her eyes. His eyes were full of sincerity. If I say that I'm a normal human, do you believe me? This was indeed not a lie. Wan Yaozhu sighed. All right, I believe you. I was wrong about this. There were many cultivators in the Wanxiang sect who brought their skills with them. The 10,000 divine scripture was also all-encompassing and strange. It really could not be judged as a cultivation method. But she added, But you lied to me. I will not forgive you. You have to leave the 100 Herb Garden. Li Qingshan said with a smile, Without me, are you going to invite Xinyu Shu back? I'm afraid he doesn't have the time now. Wan Yaozhu clenched her fists. You want to threaten me? I have hands and feet. I don't need other people's help. Li Qingshan could not help but laugh. She was like a little girl throwing a tantrum. He spread his hands. But I did not lie to you. This cultivation method is my greatest secret. It was imparted to me by someone very important to me. I didn't even give it to Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai, who wanted it. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai also knows. Wan Yaozhu was skeptical. Old man, doesn't know anything. If he didn't know, why would he summon me to heaven the moment I entered the sect and chase me out? Why would he give me such a heavenly scripture? He simply wants me dead. Li Qingshan shook his head with deep resentment. He should have easily transcended the 4 heavenly tribulations, but he nearly lost his life. Wan Yaozhu said curiously, Nonsense! Since Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai wants to chase you out, how can you stay? Of course it's because I'm extraordinarily charming. Don't look at me like that. Under the starry sky, Li Qingshan spoke slowly, and Wan Yaozhu listened quietly. What he went through was far too bizarre. If he managed to convince the Spirit Sovereign of the Seas, then so be it, but the Spirit Sovereign of the Seas had even schemed against him. Actually, it can't be considered a ploy. This is indeed the cultivation method that suits me the best. I can stay because I promised him that I have no ill intentions towards the Myriad Phenomenon sect. You know that he can tell if I'm sincere or lying. Can you? Li Qingshan suddenly asked with a burning gaze. Me. Although there are many things I can't tell you, I can assure you that I have no ill intentions towards you. On the contrary, I wish you well and want to help you. If you are in danger, I will protect you even if I have to sacrifice my life. Li Qingshan pressed his hand on his chest. His expression was extremely sincere, and there was no falsehood in his words. He was indebted to a woman who sincerely cared for him and was extremely kind. She was indeed worthy of him protecting her with his life. Wan Yaozhu's eyes flickered, and she was slightly moved. If someone else had said this, they would probably find it laughable when they heard it. You're only a Een spirit after transcending the heavenly tribulation, yet you want to protect a young spirit cultivator? You're overestimating yourself. However, she could not help but recall his conversation with demonic infant. His heroic stance in resisting the lightning saber and sword was unquestionable. Li Qingshan grinned and clenched his fists in front of his chest. His eyes flickered as he leaned forward. So please, let me stay in the herb garden. If not, I can transform into anything. Do you like a phoenix or a spirit turtle, an old bull or a tiger? A monkey doesn't seem to be suitable. Wan Yaozhu took a step back and blushed. Don't talk nonsense. Li Qingshan took a step forward. I'm serious. With a flash of green light, Wan Yaozhu fled as if she was escaping. She left behind a sentence. If you want to stay, then stay. Li Qingshan laughed aloud, pulling at his flesh. Every inch of his body was there. Arg, it hurts. With a plop, he fell into the sea. To be continued. Chapter 14:26. The seawater gently drifted. Li Qingshan quietly lay on the surface of the sea, facing the sky. The tribulation clouds dispersed, and the stars in the sky seemed to be within reach. Enduring the pain, he tried his best to stretch out his arms towards the sky, as if he wanted to grab a star. In the 100 Herb Cave, Wan Yaozhu's young spirit returned. The expression on her gentle and fair face changed slightly, like the surface of a lake that was wrinkled by the spring breeze. She seemed to be deep in thought. Even though she was persuaded in person, the change was still there, like a knot being tied. The 9-colored deer lazily lay in the basket. Is he dead? Wan Yaozhu wanted to laugh, but she couldn't. She shook her head. I knew it. Tell me, what kind of person is he? Wan Yaozhu wanted to say something, but stopped. Did something happen? The 9-colored deer woke up and straightened her body. The colorful patterns on her breasts swayed with the basket. Wan Yaozhu shook her head again and said tiredly, Nothing. Soon, Li Qingshan returned from the sea. His whole body was still in great pain, but a new journey had begun, so he couldn't wait to get on the road. Under the golden leaf Bodhi tree, he patted the trunk of the tree in a strange yet intimate way, then turned around and looked back. The sun rose from the east, and the morning glow was like fire, reflecting his eyes and long hair red. It was like the incarnation of the demon king of the North Moon. No, the demon emperor of the North Moon. He smiled slightly, and the whole 100 Herb Garden showed a side he had never seen before in his eyes. In the space of thousands of miles, the earth, fire, wind, water, and water flowed. The 4 colors lurked in the deeper layers of this landscape painting, constantly changing and blending together. In the early spring, the growth of tens of thousands of plants was full of vitality. Overall, it was not as bright as the other 4 colors, but it had an unusual beauty that could show through the painting. He was also drawn into the painting. The newborn Qilin opened its eyes, and its gentle eyes stared at everything, the small world, the 100 Herb Garden, and even the whole world. Finally, it took care of itself. Spring was the busiest time in the 100 Herb Garden. Li Qingshan clenched his fists. It's time to work. He completely forgot about the pain. With his hands clasped behind his back, he began to wander around the golden leaf Bodhi tree. With every step he took, he left behind an afterimage that was exactly the same as himself. Even the texture of his skin was exactly the same. It was as if a picture had suddenly been frozen, leaving behind a shadow that would immediately materialize. He began to move. His expression was no different from that of Li Qingshan. He scratched his head impatiently as if he didn't want to work, but he still picked up a farming tool and strode down the high hill. Li Qingshan circled around the base of the tree 10 times before 100 doppelgangers walked down the mountain. Suddenly, he stopped and said, "Enough!" He cupped his hands towards the direction of the 100 Herbs cave and said, "Shiji, I'm going to fulfill my promise." This was supposed to be a request, but when it came out of his mouth, there was a sense of unquestionable meaning. Although he didn't mean to be high and mighty, nor did he have the qualifications to be high and mighty, the red sun rose, shaking his shadow. A moment later, Wan Yaozhu's voice resounded throughout the 100 Herb garden. From today onwards, Li Qingshan will be in charge of the daily affairs of the 100 Herb garden. The busy cultivators in the 100 Herb garden looked at each other in surprise. They stopped what they were doing and discussed, "He wants to replace Senior Marshal Brother Shin? Senior Marshal Brother Shin's work is so important and complicated. How can he entrust it to a nascent soul cultivator? Senior Marshal Sister Ruan is too. Alas, Senior Marshal Brother Shin lost. His body was destroyed by him. You guys should be more peaceful. I heard that this kid has an extraordinary background and has people above him. He's valued by a few direct disciples." As they were talking, Li Qingshan's figure suddenly appeared in the field. He leisurely whistled and carried a hoe on his shoulder. He walked over unhurriedly. When he got close, he shouted, "All of you work properly." Everyone looked at each other. No one responded. They were all a bit indignant. Even when Shen Yushu was here, he wouldn't have yelled at them like this. "You're just a disciple. Do you think you can order us around just because you have Senior Marshal Sister Ruan's support? If we all go on strike, let's see how you're going to explain to Senior Marshal Sister Ruan." At this time, a female cultivator glanced around and saw a familiar figure walking over. She couldn't help but be shocked. You guys look over there?" Another Li Qingshan walked over. If it wasn't for the different tools he carried on his shoulder, it would be almost impossible to tell them apart. He shouted at them again, "All of you work properly." He also added, "Don't gather here and talk nonsense. Otherwise, be careful that I—" He fiercely waved his fist at them. In a short while, more than 10 Li Qingshan passed by. Some of them had a more amiable attitude. Some of them looked at them as if they were nothing, but basically they all had to teach them a few words. That's a clone? Humph, deliberately mystifying things. Using this kind of insignificant skill to scare us. An old cultivator impatiently stroked his grizzled beard. He waved his sleeves behind him and soared into the sky like a red-crowned crane. Looking down from the sky, thousands of miles of rivers and rivers were laid out. His expression stiffened. He saw figures of Li Qingshan all over the mountains and plains. Each of them was engaged in different tasks. Their movements were agile and powerful. It was completely impossible to tell which one was real and which one was fake. Some of them could even cast some small spells to fertilize and water the plants. Moreover, there were even more Li Qingshan walking out from under the golden-leafed Bodhi tree. He gulped and slowly descended, under the surrounding cultivators' gazes. "Stop talking and work properly." Under the golden-leafed Bodhi tree, Li Qingshan breathed in and out rich spiritual energy and slowly recovered his strength. The pain in his body and soul wasn't only because of his injuries. More importantly, it was because he had gone through 4 heavenly tribulations and reached a new level. Everything that he thought was perfect had been overturned and started anew. Moreover, there was already an even more beautiful blueprint. It was as if he had experienced an even more profound nirvana. There was no need to talk about the 9 transformations of demons and gods. It was the same for the Unfettered Sutra. Although spirit sovereign Guihai was suspected of cheating his father and had nearly cheated him to death, the unfettered sutra was indeed very suitable for him. Not only was it compatible with his temperament and cultivation, but it was also a gamble. He had gambled with his life. Now that he had won the gamble, his harvest was abnormally rich. The Een god condensed by the unfettered sutra, or more accurately, the Een demon had endless uses. He didn't have the time to enjoy all the fruits. However, if he were to fight Shin Yushu again, he wouldn't even need to move a finger. Just the Een demon alone would be enough to toy with him to death. The demonic infant state could hide in the void and dodge the tribulation lightning. Even if the tribulation lightning's main target wasn't it, what kind of escape technique was that? As for creating avatars, it had completely broken through his understanding of avatars. It had become extremely simple. Now, every thought of his could transform into an avatar. They were independent, but closely related to each other. They were under his control, but they could also act as they pleased. His thoughts were limitless, and so were his doppelgangers. They were only limited by his divine sense and power. With the support of the brand new small world, he could completely create many doppelgangers. Taking care of the 100-herb garden was not difficult at all. However, what was a little awkward was that many of the avatars would lie down and rest when they reached the fields. They would cross their legs and admire the blue sky and white clouds. There was no other way. Everything had its pros and cons. These thought avatars were a little similar to the raging demonic infant. He didn't need to painstakingly control every action of each avatar to break the limit of numbers. If he transformed an avatar and thought, the sky is so blue and the grass is so green, why don't I lie down and rest? Then the thought avatar's work wouldn't be very enthusiastic. As a result, all Li Qingshan could do was destroy all of these thoughts that enjoyed ease and hated work. He sped up his way around the tree, constantly muttering, "Work hard," and conjuring even more thought clones that were more motivated. In the 100-herb cave, Wan Yaozhu and the 9-colored deer watched this scene. The 9-colored deer said in surprise, "This unfettered heavenly book is really too powerful. He can fight, escape, and work. This kid's luck is really good." Wan Yaozhu said, "If you knew the situation when he transcended the tribulation, you wouldn't think it was luck." "All right, what happened?" "I asked you, but you didn't tell me. Are you still a good sister?" The nascent soul fell into a demonic state and wanted to destroy itself. Even without the tribulation lightning, the demonic infant was enough to kill most cultivators. How did he survive? The 9-colored deer felt even more curious. There seemed to be some subtle changes after Wan Yaozhu went out. Wan Yaozhu said vaguely. In short, he had a clear mind and survived. Chapter 1427. How can this be? Wan Yaozhu was evasive. Under the intense gaze of the 9-colored deer, she suddenly changed the topic and smiled. "If this goes on, we won't need other cultivators. He's enough." "No." The 9-colored deer immediately objected. "Why not?" "No means no. A man and a woman alone in a room was too scary." "Then forget it." Wan Yaozhu did not insist. She touched her hair and sighed in relief, feeling somewhat apologetic. There was nothing they didn't talk about, but this was related to his biggest secret, and he couldn't reveal it so easily. The 9-colored deer thought, "Blockhead. Oh, blockhead, you can't even fool a stranger when you lie. Damn it, something must have happened. It's all that damn Li Qingshan's fault. I can't give up. I must get rid of him." At this moment, he suddenly heard Li Qingshan's laughter. It was wanton and filled with lofty sentiments. When Li Qingshan completely took over the herb garden, he quickly took care of everything. He sat down under the golden leaf Bodhi tree and silently felt his new power. The newly born small world was still in its embryonic stage, like a bird that had just hatched from an egg. Many parts of it were still a chaotic haze of light, slowly circulating and brewing new laws. It would still take a long time for it to truly condense and take shape. His physique was still very weak, far from reaching the point where he could spread his wings and soar. So he couldn't estimate how strong it would be, but he believed it would be very strong. Because right now, he was already very strong. With this power, whether it was taking over the cave of Xianming or fighting with Chao Qianjiao, he had more confidence. Even demon god Qiongqi was no longer so far away. He would eventually have to face these enemies one by one and win. The most wonderful thing was that he had finally broken through the bottleneck of the Qilin longevity scheme. Like the other transformations, the first tier was still very weak. It was just another innate divine ability. But this was only the beginning. Once he cultivated the Qilin transformation to the 5th tier, the other transformations that were suppressed would be completely restored. When that moment came, the new little world would be completely stable and formed. He was simply unable to imagine to what extent his cultivation would rise when that moment arrived, and how formidable his strength would be. For others, it wasn't easy for them to overcome 4 heavenly tribulations. What followed next was a long transition period. It would take a very long time for him to accumulate enough energy before he would have the chance to try to transcend the 5th heavenly tribulation. This accumulation period could be 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, or even a lifetime. However, to him, this was an opportunity for him to soar. Perhaps it was still a steep cliff in front of him, but he had grown a pair of wings. It could easily fly over high mountains and cliffs. It was entirely possible for him to undergo 5 heavenly tribulations in 30 years. Because he had been suppressed in the Demon King realm for far too long. He should have been able to transcend the 4th heavenly tribulation many years ago, but he had stopped due to various reasons. It wasn't that he was stagnating. Instead, he was constantly forging ahead and accumulating power, lowering his overall strength by a level. In the human realm, he created a new source of power, the unfettered heavenly scripture. The appearance of the 2 tribulation lightning weapons was very likely related to this. It seemed that even the heavens could not tolerate such a monster and wanted to strangle him in the cradle. However, he still withstood the will of heaven. After enduring the long night, he saw a glimmer of light. When the hero grew from the iron cradle, this was not a slow and long transition period, but an explosive period of rapid advancement. His next goals were the 5th tier of Qilin, the 5th tier of Ape Demon, and the initial success of the unfettered heavenly scripture. As long as he achieved these 3 goals, how hard would it be to transcend the 5th heavenly tribulation? How hard would it be to become a demon sovereign or human sovereign? Becoming a direct disciple would be as easy as pie. What true dragon Ao Xian? He's not even qualified to be his mount. What eldest senior sister Chao Qianjiao? Her figure is not bad. I can consider her as a mount. And that damned rabbit, he drank my wine and stepped on my face. This is intolerable. Watch me crush them one by one, then fight Qiongqi in the demonic realm. Wouldn't that be fun? Ha 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 ha. Li Qingshan laughed wildly. The Bodhi tree trembled, and his laughter spread throughout the entire 100 herb garden. The cultivators all criticized, a villain intoxicated by success. He just replaced Shen Yushu. There's no need to be so smug. No one could understand his thoughts, just like how a sparrow could not understand the ambitions of a great swan. No, perhaps there was one person in the 100 herb cave abode Yuan Yaozhu recalled the stormy sea and the conversation between Li Qingshan and the demon infant. Does he really think he can defeat demon god Qiongqi and ascend to the 9 heavens? She kept thinking about this sentence. Did the demon god Qiongqi that the demon infant mentioned really refer to the 12 demon gods in the demonic realm? How could a mere nascent soul cultivator be related to such an existence? Even the supreme sect master of the Myriad Phenomenon sect, the legendary old man of Heavenly Book, might not be a match for demon god Qiongqi. Thinking of this, she shook her head. No, although the supreme sect master was a perfected immortal, he did not specialize in combat. He would definitely not be a match for demon god Qiongqi. Even the great emperor Zhenwu could not kill the 12 demon gods. Yet, a mere nascent soul cultivator wanted to become an enemy of them. It was simply absurd. However, it was this absurd answer that explained everything. Why was he in such a rush to advance and gambled like crazy, as if he did not care what would happen if he lost? Why did he not cower in the face of a true disciple and even dared to challenge him to a battle? His bravery was astonishing. That was because there was a stronger enemy and a more terrifying fate waiting for him. It was precisely because of this that the strange demon infant had appeared. The Book of Freedom was definitely not a trap that Spirit Venerable Guihai had set for him. Otherwise, it would not have been so troublesome. Furthermore, the birth of a new heavenly book was a major event that would be announced to the entire Myriad Phenomenon sect. The Book of Freedom had long been clearly listed in the Myriad Phenomenon Heavenly Book, and disciples could choose to cultivate it. Then there was only one explanation. The nascent soul cultivated from the Book of Freedom was more prone to chi deviation. They might even suffer chi deviation during the tribulation transcendence, but they would not want to self-destruct. Otherwise, no one would survive if they self-destructed their nascent soul. Li Qingshan's demon infant did not self-destruct because it wanted to kill him. That made sense. Cultivators who could cultivate to this stage could basically achieve immortality. How could they have such a demonic barrier? At most, they would be disturbed by demonic thoughts. Although it was very dangerous, it was not to the point of certain death. And he clearly had extremely high talent and extraordinary bloodline. He might even live longer than her, but his greatest demonic barrier was to want to self-destruct. Wasn't this extremely laughable and tragic? She finally understood why he had rushed forward without any regard for anything. The heavens had given him a fate of certain death, and it was about a few decades. How short a time was that for cultivators like them? If she had encountered such a ridiculous matter, she would probably be filled with worry and bear an extremely heavy burden. When that wild laughter entered her ears, it made her feel a deep sense of sorrow. As the saying goes, the heavens make fools of men, and heroes meet their end. She could not help but look up. Sunlight shone in from above, covering her in a hazy halo. In the 100 Herb Garden, a man and a woman, one sad and one happy. Although the sorrow and joy of humans could not be interlinked, they could still resonate. Chapter 14:28. The demonic psyche was the resource for practicing the heavenly tome of freedom. Coincidentally, Li Qingshan's demonic psyche was much heavier than regular people's. This was originally a major side effect of practicing the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine. In the very beginning, he had to constantly suppress it with the spirit turtle, or he would lose control. As his cultivation increased and his miniature world took shape, he no longer had to care about the balance of the demonic and divine. However, the demonic psyche still existed, and it was far more intense than ever before. Right now, the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine did not allow him to make any breakthroughs, so he began practicing the heavenly tome of freedom first. Even if the spirit sovereign of Si Guihai really was screwing him over since he had come this far, all he could do was tread forward despite knowing that there was a tiger in the mountain. He sat down with his legs crossed and observed his body. In a chaotic world, the Een demon also sat down with his legs crossed. His posture was exactly the same as his, without any difference at all. However, his face was blurry, hazy like it was shrouded in a thin layer of mist. With a thought, killing intent rose up in Li Qingshan's heart. A gust of wind blew away the mist, revealing a furious face that was as vicious as a tiger's. His eyebrows were tightly furrowed, and his fangs protruded. He surged with murderousness as if he wanted to eat someone. With another thought, he became solemn and unyielding. The Een demon's expression changed as well. He pursed his lips firmly, becoming rude and stubborn. He suddenly smiled. The Een demon began to scratch his ears and cheeks, looking around. He was irritable and uneasy, like a monkey trapped in a cage that wanted to break out and be free. As he practiced the heavenly tome of freedom, he allowed the demonic psyche to run amok in his heart. The Een demon's face seemed to change. It was sometimes greedy and lustful, sometimes bloodthirsty and murderous, sometimes fearful, furious, resentful. The Een demon gradually became more and more condensed, absorbing the power of the chaotic world sliver by sliver. Suddenly, he seemed to break through a certain critical point. The Een demon began to swell rapidly. His body twisted, growing ox horns, tiger claws, and ape arms. He seemed human, yet not human, like a demon, yet not demon. He seemed more like a demonfolk's demonification. Roar! The Een demon roared at the sky, hysterically, shaking up the entire chaotic world. It shook up the entire chaotic world as if it wanted to overthrow Li Qingshan, the supreme ruler who stood high above. Li Qingshan quickly stopped circulating the unfettered heavenly tome. However, the Een demon continued to expand uncontrollably, even circulating the unfettered sutra on its own. Even the 3 devil transformations showed signs of losing control. It was as if he had returned to the situation when he was going through the tribulation. His entire body was numb and stiff. Li Qingshan's mouth twitched. This time it's too big. Cultivating the unfettered heavenly tome was easy for him, but the price he had to pay for it was extremely dangerous. If he wasn't careful, he would go berserk. Nothing was more terrifying than this for cultivators. Only he dared to play like this, and those who played with fire would definitely die. Spirit turtle suppresses the seas. The image of the spirit turtle appeared. Its body shone with a clear light as it fiercely suppressed the Een demons. Boom! Even the Een demon could not withstand the spirit turtle's suppression. Like a ball of plasticine, it twisted and crumpled into a pile. Li Qingshan was still worried, so he used the phoenix's scripture of Nerva again. With the cry of a phoenix in his sea of consciousness, the phoenix flew over and stood on the spirit turtle's back. Small fry, do you think I can't suppress you? Just as Li Qingshan was feeling smug, he suddenly noticed that the Een demons were slowly seeping into the spirit turtle. The clear light gradually faded. The chaotic world would expand and collapse at times, becoming really unstable. Once this power lost control, it would destroy him from the inside out. He wouldn't even be able to undergo rebirth. If inner demons were so easy to deal with and cultivation deviation could be suppressed so easily, then most cultivators wouldn't view him as the top enemy. All the demonic thoughts came from his heart. This wasn't an invasion from the outside, but an internal conflict in the imperial court. Even the imperial guards couldn't be relied on. They might even turn against him. Thoughts were something that couldn't be suppressed. Li Qingshan had no choice but to pay attention to it. However, he didn't panic at all. He had seen all kinds of dangerous and urgent situations before. The more dangerous the situation, the more battle intent he could unleash. There were also many sparks of inspiration. Going head-on doesn't seem to work, so let's try this. Li Qingshan sucked in a deep breath. The wind whistled past the mountain, and the golden leaves on the tree rustled. His face became calm and peaceful. In the chaotic world, a Qilin slowly walked out of the chaos. By now, the Yin demons had already devoured the spirit turtle. Even the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression was useless, yet he used the weak Qilin scroll of longevity. He chanted, "Qilin's divine ability, endless growth." However, there were no shocking changes. There were no beautiful lights or shocking sounds. There was only the rustling of the wind. A golden leaf fell, circling around him before drifting away. Soon after, another leaf fell. Ruan Yaozhu was currently paying attention to him. She became nervous when his breathing became chaotic, as if he was suffering from cultivation deviation. What's going on? Even in autumn and winter, the golden leaf Bodhi tree rarely shed leaves. The grass around Li Qingshan was originally green, but it rapidly withered now. In the blink of an eye, the withered yellow spread across the entire mountain, as if autumn had arrived. Rustle! Countless golden leaves were blown away by the wind. They were like golden butterflies, flying freely in the sunlight. The 9-colored deer cried out, "Hey, blockhead, he's using some evil technique to absorb the vitality of the surrounding plants. Stop him." The withered yellow had already spread down the mountain towards the precious spiritual plants and flowers. Ruan Yaozhu did not move. Let's talk about it later. The 9-colored deer looked at her in disbelief. Every single flower and grass in the 100-herb garden was her precious treasure. Not only was it for the bookmarks and contribution points from the Myriad Phenomenon sect, but it was also for her blood, sweat, and tears. Even if it was to provide spiritual plants to the Myriad Phenomenon sect, she would not uproot them unless she had no other choice. How could he just watch as a bastard destroyed these treasures for his own selfishness? Seeing the withered yellow spread and the spiritual plants begin to wither, she could not hold it in anymore. "If you don't care, I'll care. Don't go. Ruan Yaozhu ordered. That damned bastard. What kind of medicine did he feed you? Ruan Yaozhu said helplessly, What are you thinking about? He might have entered a state of qi deviation and is at a critical juncture. He had no choice but to do this. I will make him compensate for the losses. Ruan Yaozhu thought to herself, Do I need to lend him a helping hand? The nine-colored deer was shocked. Cultivation deviation. Quickly move him out of the 100-herb garden. If he self-detonated, who knew how many spiritual plants would be destroyed? Ruan Yaozhu shook her head firmly. He will be fine. He even survived that critical moment. It was also Li Qingshan's first time using this technique. Could it be that the first technique of the Qilin transformation was an evil technique that could devour life? No, of course not. He reached out to grab a leaf and let out a breath. Chapter 1429. Inhale, inhale, inhale. Flowers and plants grew luxuriantly and withered in the blink of an eye. Just like the poem said, the grass on the plains withered and flourished every year. Every breath he took seemed to go through this process. The cycle of life and death, withering and flourishing. The colors of fresh green and withered yellow repeatedly spread around him, and each time the vegetation became more luxuriant. They even surpassed their original forms. They gathered the spiritual energy of the 100-herb garden and were inconceivably vigorous. Even those exotic flowers and plants became full of vitality. The golden leaf Bodhi tree behind him changed its leaves, stretched its branches, and grew towards the sky. This is a Qilin. The nine-colored deer was astonished. Legend had it that wherever a Qilin went, the vegetation would become abnormally lush. Even if it landed in a desert, it would quickly become an oasis. If they lived there for a long time, those ordinary plants would even transform into spirit wood and spirit grass, a symbol of life. However, this kid clearly only had a trace of the Qilin bloodline, so how could he display such a phenomenon? Ruan Yaozhu relaxed and said with a smile, It seems that he has found the right person to take care of the 100-herb garden. The Qilin was an extremely rare and benevolent beast. Generations of masters of the herb garden wanted to raise one. In the herb garden, an even greater desire was to have a Qilin. It was the most suitable mount for cultivators of the book of nature, as one could sense the way of nature from it. Suddenly remembering his joke, she blushed and glanced at the nine-colored deer. She was quite satisfied with this mount. This is definitely a vile creature. The nine-colored deer cried out. She had just thought about how to drive him out of the 100-herb garden, and now there was another reason why she absolutely could not drive him out. The heavens were simply unreasonable. Li Qingshan inhaled and exhaled the vigorous life force between heaven and earth. Qilin had never harmed a single blade of grass or tree since it was born. This was their only source of food. Demons were like plants that gradually withered and shrunk. No matter how many demonic thoughts flowed in their hearts, they didn't suppress it or obsess over it. It was just an instinct that all living beings in the world had. Even the thought of self-destruction was just a part of the natural cycle, so there was no need to feel uneasy and be in a hurry to destroy it. A Qilin or even a benevolent beast. It wasn't that he was born without any evil thoughts, but that he could remain unmoved by them. To be good at nurturing all living things without competing, to be born without being born, to not rely on one's own, to grow without being greedy. This is called Shwanda. This was the number one divine ability of the Qilin transformation, endless vitality. Just as he expected, this divine ability had no combat power. As a battle maniac, he didn't take this divine ability to heart. But looking at it now, this god art seemed to be very suitable for working in the 100-herb garden. Although he was not interested in growing flowers and plants, He could have an additional resource besides spiritual energy. He could absorb the vigorous vitality of heaven and earth to nourish his body and mind, which was greatly beneficial to his cultivation. Most importantly, he didn't have to worry about chi deviation anymore. This divine ability was shockingly effective in dealing with mental demons. Instantly, the Een demon calmed down. There was even a serene and peaceful smile on his face, as if he had become a Buddha on the spot. The most beautiful thing in the world is beautiful. This is evil. Everyone knows that it is good, and this is not good. Good and evil were the same thought. When one's heart had a choice between right and wrong, there would be the difference between Buddha and demon. No matter how powerful the spirit turtle was, it could only suppress it. All it could do was let go of its obsession, using the natural path to balance. Li Qingshan comprehended this point and couldn't help but praise, "Amazing, amazing." However, to a warrior, any bit of strength could be turned into combat strength. Naturally, he just had to play around occasionally. The key was to do it. If he couldn't defeat a strong enemy, everything he said was useless. He instantly had a way to turn it into combat strength. He laughed and activated the Freedom Book once more. Obsession, evil, lust, evil, demonic. He had all of these bad people. Since it was beneficial to cultivating the Freedom Book, then he would use them all. As expected, very quickly he successfully went into chi deviation once more. The Een demon became even more twisted and vicious. Endless growth. He was prepared to use his divine ability to subdue the Een demon. When the Een demon calmed down, Li Qingshan did it once more. The unfettered heavenly tome had the advantage of being able to advance very quickly. Through this extreme exercise, one's cultivation would naturally advance by leaps and bounds. It should have been like he was walking on thin ice, like he was facing an abyss, but now it was like he was walking on flat ground. This was the use of divine abilities. It was either to subdue external demons or to subdue mental demons. Anyway, it would definitely be useful. The small world was still in chaos. He had subdued the Een demon and controlled it like it was his own arm. If he could repeat this cycle, Li Qingshan might even be able to ignore the 9 transformations of the demon and God and use the Freedom Book to break through the 5th heaven tribulation and become an emperor. However, the regretful thing was that demonic thoughts were consumables. Very quickly, he realized that he couldn't have any demonic thoughts in his heart anymore. Greed, lust, self-destruction, they all disappeared. It wasn't hard for a person to do one bad thing, but it was hard to do it for the rest of one's life. Li Qingshan exhaled and felt exhausted. However, he felt really calm and peaceful. He felt that the world was so beautiful, and that life was so cute and so insignificant. He had an urge to become a monk. Speaking of monks, I wonder how Bunu is doing? I haven't seen Little and Little Ming and Yening for a long time. I really miss them. I hope they are all safe and sound. Great sage, Li Qingshan supported his head and thought so gently. Not long after, his will continued and replaced the old with new doppelgangers. Each doppelganger's face was brimming with sunshine. To every cultivator in the 100 Herb Garden, they were as warm as spring. They did good deeds everywhere and never left their names. Everyone was greatly moved by this. His sincere eyes and gentle smile made it hard for anyone to tell that he was putting on an act. Even if there were a few stubborn ones, they were moved by his sincerity and willingly submitted to him. No matter how they looked at it, this one was much better than Shen Yushu. When the female cultivators saw his smile, their hearts were beating fast. Until this moment, Li Qingshan could be considered to have truly realized the words, "Win people over with virtue." The only regret was that even those bastards who didn't know how to appreciate kindness were really influenced by him. Now, they called him Senior Brother whenever they saw him, causing him to be unable to have any demonic thoughts. He couldn't mess up Wan Yaoju's place and purposely cause trouble in the herb garden. Instead, he had to frequently use the Qilin's divine ability, endless vitality, to help the plants grow. The herb garden achieved an unprecedented great harmony. Everyone was for him, and he was for everyone. The present world was stable, and the years were peaceful. One day during his afternoon nap, he suddenly shivered and woke up with a face full of melancholy. If this goes on, won't I become a good person? However, in the blink of an eye, this melancholy also melted under the afternoon sun, revealing a bright and beautiful smile. However, during this period of time, he didn't see Wan Yaoju again. Is she still angry at me? But this can't be helped. At this moment, the 9-colored deer flew over through the air and landed in front of Li Qingshan. It studied him up and down, studying him left and right. It was unable to imagine where Li Qingshan's change had come from. In the beginning, it even thought he was putting on an act, but even after so much time had passed, there were actually no openings at all. Thanks to his efforts, Wan Yaoju's whole body was relaxed, and she cultivated in peace in the cave. She took the opportunity to run out and talk to this man. Li Qingshan praised, "You are so beautiful." She was indeed an extremely elegant creature, and seemed to fit the Qilin's aesthetic standards very well. The 9-colored deer's prepared words were all blocked by these 3 words. All of the fine hairs on her body stood on end. How strange was this feeling? His eyes were so sincere, and she couldn't help but feel happy, even a bit intoxicated. She thought, "Not good. This brat knows evil methods. I can't fall for his trick." Of course, this wasn't any evil method. It was mainly the Qilin's attraction to creatures, especially a life form that was extremely close to hers. Moreover, the Yin demon also played a certain role unintentionally, charming invisibly. "Li Qingshan, I have something to say to you." "May I touch your fur?" she asked. Li Qingshan's eyes didn't have a trace of evil thoughts, just like those artists who dabbled in body art, only the purest appreciation of beauty. "Die!" The 9-colored deer roared, and Li Qingshan was sent flying by the gorgeous antlers. His eyes focused, and his battle instincts instantly awakened. His anger was like fire, and his murderous intent was like the wind. This seems to be a good opportunity to accumulate demonic thoughts. Good. Thus, he opened his arms and walked towards the 9-colored deer with his chest puffed out. "Come, as long as you are happy." Chapter 1430. Come at me. I'll teach you a lesson today. I'll let you know that it's useless. The 9-colored deer sneered, stood up, and stomped hard on Li Qingshan's head with its front hooves. With a bang, Li Qingshan was sent flying again. There was a bright red hoof print on his forehead. It was slightly sunken in, and blood was oozing out. A blow from a spirit demon emperor was not so easy to withstand. However, what was even more unbearable was the humiliation of being kicked away by that rabbit. Why do these bastard mounts like to step on people's faces so much? However, this is the feeling of excitement, and my whole body is full of energy. This is me, Li Qingshan. I'm not a good person. Ha ha. Thus, with a smile, he walked up the high hill again. This time, it was not just to collect demonic thoughts, but to feel like he had returned to his true self. "Come on, no matter how you trample on me, I won't fight back." Bang! Before Li Qingshan finished speaking, he was swept away by a slender straight line. The 9-colored deer transformed into a human wearing a colorful feather robe. She clenched her fists and was eager to try. "You asked for it. Don't cry for your parents later." Before she finished speaking, with a swoosh, Li Qingshan stood in front of her again. The smile on his face did not change, but there were two faint flames in his eyes. That will depend on your ability. All right. The nine-colored deer did not say anything else and punched Li Qingshan in the face. Li Qingshan's head tilted, and then slowly turned back. Why has the power become weaker? Are you not used to the human form? In an instant, the nine-colored deer turned into a colorful rainbow and attacked like a storm. What was more rare was that every punch and every kick was extremely elegant, like a dance pleasing to the eye. Li Qingshan's feet stepped into the ground, and he stood in the storm. He endured and did not move, as if he had become one with the earth. He continued to comment, "This punch is not bad. This kick is also not bad. It's very beautiful, but you haven't fought before, right?" It was indeed like he was watching a dance. "Shut up." The nine-colored deer gritted its teeth. However, Li Qingshan clearly felt that although she was angry, she did not have any killing intent. She did not even have the determination to hurt others. Clearly, he wasn't good at fighting and killing. If it were some other black rabbit, it would be lucky if it could survive. How would it dare to stand there and take a beating? This was probably the innate talent of the race. The black fur roar didn't even care about destroying Wanxiang City. But in this 100-herb garden, the nine-colored deer had to constantly restrain its power. He couldn't let the aftermath hurt the flowers and plants. Of course, it was enough to crush a regular demon larch. However, in Li Qingshan's eyes, it was a little showy but impractical. Therefore, even though he looked like he had been beaten up badly, most of his injuries were just flesh wounds. Even if his tendons and bones were injured with his recovery ability, he would be as good as new in a moment. The nine-colored deer suddenly stopped and glared at him, panting slightly. Li Qingshan smiled and said, "Why are you fighting? You lunatic." The nine-colored deer unwillingly clenched its fist, and a nine-colored light condensed in its eyes. That was the light of its innate ability. "Kid, take this move, and you will die. If you have the guts, don't dodge." As expected, Li Qingshan felt the danger, but he did not care and opened his arms. "All right, come. Things that can't kill me will make me stronger." The nine-colored deer's ability was ready to be unleashed, but at this moment, Wan Yaozhu's stern voice came from the sky. "Joer, come back. You tricked me." The nine-colored deer's expression changed. "You despicable person. Hey, you are the one who has been beating me." Li Qingshan was also unhappy. Being beaten without retaliating was considered despicable. His enemies were too noble. "I will not let you off." The nine-colored deer glared at him, turned around, and leaped. It turned into a white deer in midair and sprinted towards the 100-herb cave residence. Li Qingshan only felt indignant, adding another line to the blacklist in his heart. This damn deer was going against him from the start. If he had the chance, he would not let her off. He did not know how venison hot pot tasted, but she was beautiful in human form. "I want to do that first." Then that demonic thoughts grew in his heart, and he hurriedly used the Book of Freedom. Under the stimulation of the demonic thoughts, the Een demon exploded, and he used his ability to subdue it. With the use of amaranth in nature, the injuries on his body quickly healed. This innate ability not only had a strong healing effect, but it could also quickly recover one's spirit. Li Qingshan became more and more satisfied. In an instant, his heart became peaceful again. There was no more anger or hatred, and he became that virtuous great sage again. From this, he understood how fake the so-called elimination of the demonic thoughts was. If a person did not have fear, they would not avoid danger, and without anger, they would not be able to protect themselves. That was why Buddha had fire, and he needed to roar like a lion. Whether it was a protector or a propagandist, One had to use strength to convince others. With this thought, the demon surged. The hazy mist on his face dissipated, and his true appearance was revealed. It was not Li Qingshan's current appearance, but the teenager from the crouching ox village in the past. His face was rather angular. He was neither handsome nor ugly. He was just a regular teenager from a farmer's family, like thousands of mortals. The vicissitudes of life could still carve too much joy and sorrow on his face, but it also had all the fear that a mortal should have. That was his true nature. Without it, there would be no such thing as freedom. The Book of Freedom reached another level, and his cultivation completely stabilized, close to the small success stage. Li Qingshan felt the sudden increase in strength, and he could not help but smile. He did not get beaten up this time. However, if he wanted to take another step forward, such small fights would not work. The nine-colored deer was not even an enemy to him. No matter how heavy his attacks were, they would not be able to incite any killing intent in him. Only by going to a wider world to train and comprehend would he be able to create an even more powerful demonic spirit, complete the Book of Freedom, and comprehend the true path of freedom. In the 100 Herb Cave, Wan Yaozhu was slightly angry. "Jo'er, I just went into seclusion for a while. What were you doing?" "He told me to hit him." The nine-colored deer was dejected, and his face was full of grievance, like a student being scolded by a teacher. "You are in the right." Wan Yaozhu raised her voice. No matter how she looked at it, it seemed like she was the one beating up Li Qingshan. He did not even fight back, and it was not like he did not have the ability to fight back. She even doubted if she was his opponent in a life-and-death battle. Everything he had done for the 100 Herb Garden these days had touched her. No matter what past he had a kind heart, and he was really working hard. In the end, he was bullied by others, and it was in her 100 Herb Garden, and she was the one who hit him. "I am not in the right." The nine-colored deer knew that she was really angry, and it was best not to talk back at this time. That damned Li Qingshan, using this kind of trick to sow discord, was really too despicable. Wan Yaozhu gently grabbed her shoulder. "I know you are doing this for my own good, and I will try not to see him. Promise me, don't make trouble again, okay?" "Okay." After completing the first layer of cultivation, Li Qingshan temporarily set aside the heavenly tome of freedom and began accumulating his cultivation for the Qilin's method of longevity. There were no shortcuts for this, so he could only go with the flow and take it step by step. He used the eternal vitality, constantly inhaling and exhaling, and his life force constantly flowing. The wild grass changed, nourishing him, and nourishing the strange flowers and plants in the 100 Herb Garden. Wan Yaozhu naturally would not let his hard work go to waste, and doubled his contribution. Chapter 1431. In the endless void, deep blue fatty swallowed the last mountain. The heaven-climbing vine was like a long intestine transporting all living beings to the 5 continents world. The others were directly digested. The 5 continents' world size expanded, causing the ocean to become wider and the continents to expand. Although it wasn't enough to reach a higher realm, it was just a matter of time. That was because the space-swallowing beast had already started on a new journey, suddenly disappearing into the void and heading towards another star. Li Qingshan pulled out the heaven-climbing vine, but there was no place to connect it. The dragon pool cave abode had already been broken through, and the altar was probably destroyed, causing it to lose its coordinates. If he had his own cave abode, he could build a new altar and connect the 5 continents world to the human path. Then he could use the 5 continents world to cultivate. Many people he trusted could come to the human path and help him. He didn't know when Pai Yangqiu would help him settle the Xianming cave abode. Cultivators always had a slow sense of time, so he could only wait patiently. He couldn't help but think that if the five continents world continued to expand, one day it might become an unbelievable giant, even comparable to the six paths of reincarnation. As the god of the world, all living beings were his allies. Could he nurture them? The shadows of the trees danced in the wind. Li Qingshan gazed over and saw a young cultivator make his way up the hill. He said politely, "Senior brother, I've just returned from Myriad Phenomenon City. Senior Brother Pi of the Abundance Department has asked me to tell you that the item you want has already been prepared. If you are free, come to the Sky Estate Department to take them." Li Qingshan smiled. Not bad. With his current cultivation, that true dragon called Ao Xian might not be invincible. He thanked the young cultivator and stood up. It was time to make a trip to Wanxiang City. The Een demon sunk into the hill and maintained the many-thought clones. He left the 100-herb garden and flew towards the ocean. Level 19. Spirit Venerable Guihai was reading a book. He raised his head and glanced at Li Qingshan. That gaze that was as deep as the sea still made him shudder. It was like everything about him had been seen through. However, he was much calmer now. He understood that it was just an illusion. His fate was not something that this old bastard could understand. He stepped forward and presented the jade scroll. "Spiritual Venerable, please appraise it." Spirit Venerable Guihai took the jade slip. He was much more serious than the last time. Li Qingshan waited patiently, full of confidence. Although he had failed in his last attempt, he did not give up. Instead, he persisted. First of all, he rewarded everyone involved, especially those novelists, even if it was just to exchange for a Xuanmulat. He was also rewarded handsomely. In any case, for a god of the world like him, it was a good thing, but not costly. It was just like buying a horse's bones with 1,000 pieces of gold. And the results did not disappoint him. Novelists sprung up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, and their passion for writing was at an unprecedented high. This time, he had brought more novels for Spirit Sovereign Guihai. Before long, Spirit Venerable Guihai returned the jade slip to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan asked with a smile, "How is it?" "A little better." Spirit Venerate Guihai waved his hand, and the badge on Li Qingshan's chest flashed. He received a sum of contribution points, 10 times more than the previous time. This time, he did not use the Xuanmulat to humiliate Li Qingshan. He gave them all to him. On the Myriad Phenomenon list, Li Qingshan's ranking rose again. He was not far from becoming a chamber disciple, and he attracted the attention of many people. "What's your name?" asked Li Qingshan. Spirit Venerable Guihai glanced at him and casually gave a few comments. Li Qingshan memorized every word in his heart, preparing to repeat it to those novelists in the five continents world. It had to be said that Spirit Venerable Guihai had quite good taste. His comments were concise and to the point, and as long as he understood his taste, he would be able to produce more valuable novels next time. Dedicate the world to one person. How could it not work? Spirit Venerable Guihai stretched out his hand again. "Hand it over." "Ha! I really can't hide anything from you." Li Qingshan took out another jade slip. "This records some of my insights from cultivating the unfettered heavenly book. Spirit Venerable, please appraise it." These were the 3 main channels for him to increase his contribution points. Firstly, managing the 100-herb garden. The profits were the most stable and the greatest. Secondly, presenting books. Although the current profits were very low, it was worth looking forward to in the future. Finally, it was the experience of cultivating the unfettered heavenly book. This was inspired by Pai Yangqiu. After all, the Myriad Phenomenon heavenly book was the core of this world. Novels were just entertainment to Spirit Venerable Guihai, but the heavenly book was related to cultivation. It was self-evident which was more important. As the first person to try it, he believed that the profits would not be too bad. Spirit Venerable Guihai's expression turned solemn as he examined the jade slip. His eyes flickered as though he was in deep thought. After a long time, he said, "Very good." Just as he said that, the badge on Li Qingshan's chest lit up with a dazzling light. On the myriad phenomenon list, Li Qingshan's name rose sharply, and he suddenly entered the top 10 of the chamber disciples. Now that he was ranked 7th, he was close to becoming a chamber disciple. In the myriad phenomenon sect, ranking was status. Having risen twice in a short period of time, he immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the square. Ever since Li Qingshan had transcended the 4th heavenly tribulation, he had used many thought avatars to manage the 100 Herb Garden. His ranking had risen very quickly. He was improving every day like a rising star. With these 2 promotions, there was no longer any doubt that he would soon become a chamber disciple. Perhaps it would not be just that. Many of these gazes contained hostility, and it was not just jealousy. Among the true disciples, a bet had already begun. Lu Tian was much more efficient than Pai Yangqiu. Li Qingshan said, "Thank you, Spirit Venerable." Spirit Venerable Guihai said, "This unfettered heavenly book is indeed dangerous. It must have been difficult for you to transcend the 4th heavenly tribulation." Li Qingshan was speechless. "You don't have to be so direct. If I don't say it, won't you think about it? Every heavenly book is a path, and I will choose the most suitable person to open it. But what I deduced is only a map. Although it is very detailed, it also has its limitations. If you can't open this path, I won't be able to predict everything. I believe it's the truth." Li Qingshan nodded. "Because I can't deduce any mistakes in it. With you as an example, people in the future will be able to take fewer detours and avoid many traps. I can also further revise the unfettered heavenly book. This is all thanks to you. You did not let down the promise you made to me back then. Then, can you also revise my unfettered heavenly book?" Li Qingshan cursed inwardly. "This old bastard. I'm indeed a lab rat. The unfettered heavenly book I'm cultivating now is probably a crude version, which is why there are so many dangers. You don't need it." Spirit Venerable Guihai glanced at Li Qingshan. "Don't tell me I have to use a bookmark to exchange for it again." Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows. "A lab rat would be rewarded with food." "There's no need to doubt it. The unfettered heavenly book you are cultivating now is not only fine, it's also perfect." Li Qingshan questioned, "Spirit Venerable, are you fooling a child? If it's really perfect, why bother talking about revising it?" Spirit Venerable Guihai said, "The so-called perfect is a kind of extremity, and this unfettered heavenly book is a very extreme path. You understand?" Li Qingshan said thoughtfully, "Only the extremity can be perfect." "That's right. The so-called revision is not so extreme. It allows normal disciples to comprehend and cultivate it, reducing the risk of dying as much as possible. It's like 2 different paths of climbing a mountain. One is dangerous and fast, while the other is slow. Although the former is closer to the essence of this path. With your talent, as long as you are willing to slow down, you will definitely be able to reach the peak. If you want, I can help you revise it. Thank you, Spirit Venerable, for your guidance. However, I have no choice. If I don't walk this path, there will be no other path." All he needed to do was continue being a lab rat. However, he had divine powers to suppress the Een demons, so he did not need to lower the risk. The faster his cultivation speed was, the better it was. The closer he was to the essence, the better. That's why I said you don't need it. Spirit Venerable Guihai placed his hands behind his back and vanished into the forest of bookshelves. Li Qingshan pondered for a moment and came to the first level of heaven. Perhaps it was because Spirit Venerable Guihai approached him every time. He was warmly received by the staff. "Senior brother, what books do you need?" "I'll get them for you now." Li Qingshan shrugged his shoulders. "Everything." "What?" Chapter 1432. All the cultivators were dumbfounded. Li Qingshan shrugged his shoulders. "I'm just kidding. I'm not Spirit Venerable." Everyone burst out laughing. Only Spirit Venerable Guihai had such an ability in the whole nature sect. "Everyone, please continue with your business. Every time I come here, I'm in a hurry. Let's have a good tour." Li Qingshan declined a female cultivator's kind offer to be his tour guide. He wandered among the bookshelves alone. His fingertips swept over the spines of the books, but he didn't take out any of them. It seemed he was really just here to tour. But no one noticed that his fingertips were shining with an undetectable spiritual light, and he was holding a jade slip in his other hand, probing, collecting, recording. He didn't miss a single book. Since he was a disciple, he didn't need to pay any bookmark to read the books on this floor. Only a small part of them were related to cultivation, and their levels were limited, so they wouldn't be of much help to him. The rest were novels, human geography, and other miscellaneous books which could broaden his horizons. However, every book that could be placed here had been selected by Spirit Venerable Guihai. Even the lowest level cultivation dermic formulation was exquisite, simple, and all-encompassing. It was the accumulation of the myriad phenomenon sect over 1,000,000 years. It was not something any sect in the trichiliocosm could compare with. It was enough to lay a solid foundation for the cultivation path of the 5 continents. Even if it was just novels, he could show them to novelists to improve their writing skills, and he could exchange them for more bookmarks next time. Of course, the most important thing was that everything was free, and as his status increased, more and more free books would be available to him. It would be enough for him to establish a complete cultivation system in the 5 continents, completely breaking the monopoly of all the sects and families, and all living creatures could find their own paths in it. Back then, his slogan was, "Everyone can practice." Now it was, "Everyone can practice." Even he couldn't imagine what kind of world it would be. Anyway, it would be very interesting. He couldn't help but chuckle. This reason was enough. The only question now was, would Spirit Venerable Guihai stop him? He, who also had the bloodline of the spirit turtle, could almost imagine Spirit Venerable Guihai looking at him and carrying out extremely complicated calculations. He was trying to analyze all the pros and cons and predict future changes. As time passed, Li Qingshan walked past hundreds of bookshelves. No one stopped him from recording tens of thousands of books on the jade slip. He smiled. This was probably the limitation of the Spirit Turtle clan. Something like fate could not be calculated or predicted at the end of the day. Therefore, hiding in the sinkhole was the safest. When Li Qingshan walked out of the sky, it was already several days later. He felt a splitting headache, and the stars in the sky were spinning. He shook his head forcefully. He had underestimated the amount of knowledge the heavens possessed. Senior apprentice Brother Pai was probably getting impatient from waiting. He shook his head vigorously and walked towards the abundance department. In the sky, Spirit Sovereign Guihai stared at his back. His expression was somewhat uneasy. As the Heaven Lord, he naturally saw everything Li Qingshan did. This should not have been strange. A person with the bloodline of a spirit turtle would basically gather all knowledge instinctively before storing it and analyzing it. What really excited him was that he tried to predict the consequences of this action, but his deductions always collapsed at the beginning. It wasn't because it was too complicated and he didn't have time to analyze it, but because it was too huge. Many years ago, he was swimming in the sea. A huge shadow swam in the deep sea below. He didn't recognize it until a long time later that it was a Kuan. At that time, he didn't feel shocked, but he couldn't understand it. His mind was frozen. It was the same now. They were just some low-level miscellaneous books. How could they have such a huge impact? So, just like that time, he chose to stay still and wait for fate to reveal itself. At the very top of the abundance department, Pai Yongqiu grabbed Li Qingshan by the collar. "Kid, how dare you make me wait for so long?" He was a mighty true disciple, and he wanted to give a disciple who had just entered the hall a tremendous benefit. But he waited for a few days, which was too disrespectful. "Senior apprentice brother, please forgive me. The Spirit Venerable wanted me to stay and talk about the Book of Freedom. I couldn't get away." "Don't use the Spirit Venerable against me. Do you really think I don't know what you are doing in the sky?" Pai Yongqiu said angrily. Many people had seen Li Qingshan wandering in the lowest levels of the sky. How could he escape his surveillance? Li Qingshan said with a smile, "I'm just giving you a way out to make you feel better." Pai Yongqiu didn't know what to do with him. A guy who dared to face his furious senior sister wouldn't be scared by his aura. Moreover, this guy had gone through 4 heavenly tribulations, so he must be even more fearless. The anger on his face suddenly disappeared. "Senior apprentice, Brother Li, I have a good news and a bad news. Which one do you want to hear first?" Li Qingshan said with his huge hands. "Senior apprentice brother, I know. The good news is that I got the mysterious underworld cave. The bad news is that I have to deal with a real dragon. These things are natural. They aren't really a surprise." Pai Yongqiu emphasized the word surprise maliciously. Li Qingshan grinned. "I like surprises the most. What's the good news?" "Congratulations, you've become a chamber disciple." Pai Yongqiu patted Li Qingshan's shoulder. The badge on his chest suddenly lit up. It was even brighter than when he offered the unfettered scripture. On the versatility list, Li Qingshan's name suddenly broke through the limit of a chamber disciple. He immediately became a chamber disciple of the versatility sect. Everyone was dumbfounded. Li Qingshan was also shocked. "What does this mean?" Pai Yongqiu smiled. "Because you contributed to the sect. This is a reward from the abundance department. This isn't cheating, is it?" Li Qingshan also felt that something was wrong. The so-called contribution was just a few words. The contribution could be big or small. It might not be worth such a big contribution. "Yes and no. Then please take it back, senior brother. I don't need to cheat to become a true disciple. Why should I give it to others?" "It's because you will definitely become a true disciple that I have to give you this contribution. Otherwise, do you think the abundance department is a charity?" "Why?" Li Qingshan was even more surprised. Pai Yongqiu lowered his voice and held his shoulder. "Tell me first, did senior sister Ruan help you cheat?" "Of course not," Li Qingshan said decisively. His contribution to the herb garden was indeed that big. Ruan Yaozhu was quite inflexible in this aspect. Pai Yongqiu looked at Li Qingshan for a moment. "I believe in junior sister Ruan's character. She won't break her principles for a pretty boy. But others might not think so." "Who's the pretty boy?" Li Qingshan was very dissatisfied. "And who are the others?" "The other true disciples, the people standing across the gambling table. With the speed of your contribution, it won't be hard to become a true disciple in 30 years. What's worse is that there's almost no risk of dying in a place like the herb garden." Li Qingshan understood. "So, they will deal with me? These true disciples are too ungentlemanly." Pai Yongqiu shook his head. "Who told you to cheat? When did I cheat? My work in the herb garden can stand up to anyone's scrutiny." Pai Yongqiu smiled. "I'm talking about just now. Pai Yongqiu, you tricked me. Li Qingshan pointed at Pai Yangqiu's nose and said angrily. Pai Yangqiu lightly pushed his finger away. Please note that even if you become a true disciple, I will still be your senior brother. Didn't you bet on me winning? Why do you want to harm me? The point is not whether you really cheated or not. It's that they think it's enough for you to cheat. No one was willing to admit defeat, especially when the bet had just begun. It was simply a slap in the face, but they won't go to the herb garden to inspect your work, nor will they question whether my contribution is reasonable. That would be offending junior sister Wan and I. Instead, they will directly deal with you. Pai Yangqiu's index finger heavily poked Li Qingshan's chest. That's why you have to seize the initiative and quickly become a true disciple. Yes, it's too easy for a true disciple to deal with a true disciple. They don't even need to find an excuse. Not all direct disciples are like Lu Tian, who respects the rules of the bet, or like Chao Tianjiao, who is straightforward. There are also many bad people like me. Pai Yangqiu patted his chest, his face showing no shame. Li Qingshan rolled his eyes. Then just because I'm a true disciple, will they have any qualms? Yes, they just need to find an excuse. What's the difference? There's a big difference, but there's no difference. Just like what Lu Tian said, you can never easily take everything from the gambling table. So the bad news is that they're probably angered by me now. Once you walk out of the Sky Mansion department, you'll encounter a lot of trouble. I hope you'll be mentally prepared. Pai Yangqiu helped Li Qingshan straighten his clothes and stuffed an item into his hands. Chapter 1433. The object was shaped like the 8 trigrams. It was neither metal nor wood, and it was as cold as ice. A black gem was embedded in the center. It was as black as ink, and when one looked into it, it felt like even one's soul would be sucked into it. Although it did not contain any powerful energy, its internal structure was exquisite. The tortoise could not fully deduce it in a short time, but it had a strange sense of beauty. Pai Yangqiu said, "This is the main formation plate of the Xianming cave." Li Qingshan looked away from the black gem and asked, "Can I control the formation to suppress the true dragon Ao Xian?" Pai Yangqiu laughed. "Of course that's impossible. After all, he is the master of the Xianming cave. TSK, the abundance department, is so useless." Pai Yangqiu was not angry. He said in a serious tone, "This is just a key. It can help you open the door, but you can't use it to stab people." "All right, thank you, master." Li Qingshan cupped his fists and kept the key. This was also within his expectations, so he was not too disappointed. "You really plan to solve it with force?" Pai Yangqiu asked. Facing a true dragon that had undergone 5 heavenly tribulations, most people would come up with a few clever plans. Fighting it head-on was the worst plan that they could think of. Li Qingshan shrugged. "Who knows? Then I advise you to go through 5 heavenly tribulations first, but try to think of a way to negotiate." Li Qingshan shook his head. "I don't have a glib tongue like you, senior apprentice brother. It's easy to anger people. That's what I admire about you. Let me remind you one last time that no one can help you with this, be it me or junior apprentice sister Wan. You better take care of yourself." Pai Yangqiu said in a serious tone. At that moment, a servant in green came in and reported, "Senior apprentice brother, the quartermaster is here. He said he wants to see Li Qingshan." Pai Yangqiu frowned. "That Guxing really doesn't give me any face. Let him in." "Guxing." Li Qingshan mumbled. He had seen this name on the all-creation leaderboard. It was ranked 18th. A moment later, a military officer in military uniform with a stern expression walked in. He first paid his respects to Pai Yangqiu, reporting to Senior Brother Pai, "I am here on the orders of Senior Brother Changgu to recruit Li Qingshan." As he spoke, He took out a piece of paper and handed it to Li Qingshan. Below the words enlistment order were a few lines of scribbled words. Li Qingshan could only recognize his own name. The writer seemed to be very hasty and perfunctory, perhaps even a little angry. The seal of the quartermaster department was clearly printed at the bottom. Li Qingshan raised his head and looked at Pai Yangqiu. This senior Ge is one of the gamblers. He is also the most stingy one, famous for being a miser, haggling over even a profound wood lot. Pai Yangqiu seemed to be afraid of speaking ill of Guxing, causing the corner of the quartermaster's eyes to twitch. Li Qingshan asked again, "What does the quartermaster department do? What right do they have to conscript me?" The human realm is connected to the world's, so there will be many conflicts, especially when the infernal domain invaded them year after year. All the major sects must organize people to participate in the war. The quartermaster department is in charge of recruiting cultivators and organizing military supplies to the battlefield. Li Qingshan immediately recalled the books he read in heaven not long ago. Most of them described the war that had lasted since the beginning of reincarnation. If a world was like a country, then the 6 paths of reincarnation were the 6 great countries. Together with the infernal domain, it was the 7 heroes of the warring states. The most famous one was the feud between the Azura path and the heavenly path. From the moment they were born, they started attacking each other. The heavenly path had 33 heavens, and they were all led by Sakra. The Azura path lost more than they won. But as long as there was a chance, they would attack the heavens. The hell path had the 10 kings of hell, the 4 great judges, and the 10 commanders of Een. They had always been working to suppress the hungry ghost path and bring the dead back into the path of reincarnation. They did not tolerate the dead of the worlds. Although the hungry ghost path was no match for the hell path, it relied on its extraordinary world will to devour the 3,000 worlds and continued to expand. It often attacked all the other worlds indiscriminately, wanting all the living to become dead. The demonic beast path was a primitive and wild land. Even though there were many strong people, it was extremely chaotic. It was the least like a country, but other than the crazy hungry ghost path. There were no hostile countries. The world of the human path was between order and chaos. Although its overall strength was not weak, it did not have the strict order of the heavenly path and the hell path. It also did not have the strong world will of the hungry ghost path and the Azura path. The open and secret fights between the sects were even worse than the demonic beast path. But at the same time, it was the enemy of all worlds. Countless sects and cultivators, according to their own needs, either went to the demonic beast path to kill demonic beasts and tame their mounts, or went to the hungry ghost path to rob tombs and enslave ghouls, or sneaked into the heaven path and the Azura path to steal divine weapons and rare treasures. They even directly captured celestials and Azuras and used their flesh, blood, and souls to cultivate, refine pills, and forge weapons. Regardless of good or evil, there were countless cultivators who went to the hell path to break in because of all kinds of love and hatred. Many strange stories played out. It left a very deep impression on Li Qingshan. Celestials, Azuras, and even demons and ghouls could enter and leave the human path freely, but they would kill any humans who trespassed. In particular, the hell path's defenses were the tightest. Originally, this was not a big problem, as the human path was allied with the various worlds at the same time. Whether it be demons or ghouls, there were no eternal enemies, only eternal interests. Various small conflicts occurred constantly, but they rarely escalated into wars between countries. The various worlds loathed humans, but none of them treated the human path as an enemy. Even the most invasive hungry ghost path did not pose too much of a threat to the human path due to the suppression of the hell path. However, evil people would be tormented by evil people. That was the demon domain independent of the 6 realms of Sasra. Under the encouragement of the evil and chaotic world, the 12 demon gods led an army of demon folk, constantly attacking the human path with many demonic sects as spies. The righteous sects of the human path were forced to organize themselves. They suppressed the traitors internally and organized defenses externally. The myriad sect was a large sect with many cultivators. They had always been one of the main forces. Under these circumstances, the authority of the supply department was extremely great. When necessary, they could forcibly recruit disciples into the army. When necessary, it meant that the head of the supply department felt it was necessary, which was the direct disciple Gushing. Junior Brother Li, military orders must be obeyed. Those who disobey will be executed. Please report to the supply department with me immediately. The supply officer said emotionlessly, I'm a proper formal disciple. Is he going to execute me just like that? Li Qingshan said boldly as he glanced at Pai Yongqiu. Pai Yongqiu smiled. That's right. If Senior Brother Gu wants to forcefully recruit me as a formal disciple, it probably won't be that easy. Seeing Pai Yongqiu speak, the supply officer's expression eased up slightly. He lowered his head and clasped his hands. I'm only following orders. If Junior Brother wants to disobey them, I'll return to the supply department right now to report back. Li Qingshan asked Pai Yongqiu, what do I do? Do I go or not? Pai Yongqiu rubbed his nose. You can't directly defy military orders. You still have to go to the supply department, but you can't just go like this. You have to ask for help from your senior sister Wan. You're a member of the 100 Herb Garden, and you've made such a great contribution to the 100 Herb Garden. She'll have to step forward regardless of the circumstances. Then what about you? I'm the mastermind. Chapter 1434. Is Li Qingshan in this city? Gu Yenying looked around with her sharp eagle eyes and asked telepathically. Yes. Little and nodded and walked into the city. Both of them were dressed in white robes embroidered with gold and had white bandages over their heads and faces. The hem of their robes dragged on the ground as they walked, giving off a desert vibe. However, there was no shortage of eccentrics among cultivators, so they were not conspicuous in the crowd. Gu Yenying was enjoying the scenery of the city, the crisscrossing rivers and streets, the well-proportioned balconies and gardens. It was not just a scenery with each step, but 100 sceneries with each step she took. Although it was a bustling city, it did not have the mundane atmosphere of an ordinary city. It could be said that all cultivators talk and laugh, and no mortals come and go. She couldn't help but exclaim, "This is really a good place." We were blocked in the cave residence and almost lost our lives. He must be very happy here, and he might have met many women. TSK, if I had known this, I would have come to explore the way. Little and did not answer. He walked forward at a fixed pace. He stepped on the bluestone road, crossed a bridge, turned into an alley, and walked into a main street. The mottled light and shadow between the buildings quietly flowed on the white robe. After being together for so many days, Gu Yenying was already used to it. His situation is unclear now, so we shouldn't rashly recognize him. After we find him, let's observe him for a while. It's best if he comes to us. Yes, Little and responded and continued to walk forward. After a while, Gu Yenying showed a puzzled expression. "Miss, I'm not doubting your feelings. Although the path we took is different, we have been walking in circles since just now." Little and said, "We are walking in circles." Gu Yenying asked, "Where is he?" "I don't know." Little and took the initiative to explain, which was very rare. There are too many cultivators gathered here, and there are too many formations to determine the exact location of Qingshan. You have sharp eyes. Look carefully. Thank you for the compliment. Gu Yenying held her forehead with a helpless expression. I'll use my sharp eyes to search carefully. She stretched out 2 fingers to touch her eyes and turned her wrist to look around. Little and said, Be serious. Gu Yenying's eyes focused. She ignored the obstruction of various buildings, bypassed various magic circles, and skimmed over the flowing river like a hawk. He flew over the rows of shacks and passed through the gaps between the buildings. All of a sudden, his eyes lit up. I saw him, Little, and immediately said, Take me there. The 2 of them, one in front and one behind, quietly and quickly crossed the street, like 2 ghosts walking in the daytime. They soon arrived at a public square in the world. Little and looked around anxiously, but couldn't find Li Qingshan. Where is he? Gu Yenying smiled and pointed to the list of all creations. His name. A touch of anger flashed across Little Anne's face, and he stared at Gu Yenying expressionlessly. Swoosh! Gu Yenying whistled. She turned her head to avoid looking at her. It's better than going around in circles in the city. Little Anne withdrew her gaze and looked at the 3 creations Li Qingshan on the list of all creations. Gu Yenying patted her on the shoulder. It's very close. He can be on this list, and it proves that he's doing well. Based on his character, he will definitely make trouble. He won't be unknown. I can find out by just asking around. So she focused her eyes. She used her eyes instead of her ears to listen. The hustle and bustle on the public square turned into thousands of words falling into her eyes. Even some rough thoughts of low-level cultivators were captured by her eyes. In an instant, the 3 creations Li Qingshan appeared over 100 times, and this didn't include the large amounts of thoughts that couldn't be captured. Gu Yenying smiled. I knew it. The list of all creations was important information that all disciples paid attention to. It directly determined one's status and rank. The fact that Li Qingshan suddenly became an inner disciple had already caused a huge reaction in Wanxiang City, especially on this public square. Moreover, rumors and slanders were flying everywhere. Did you hear? The quartermaster has already sent people to recruit that Li guy. Why didn't I hear about it? Do you think you're the only one who is well-informed? That Li guy is really unlucky this time. This is so satisfying. How can the myriad creations sect be so unruly? He wanted to hide in the 100-herb garden and take care of the flowers and plants, but he was sent to the battlefield. That's right. It's not just senior brother Ge. I heard that a few senior brothers are also very dissatisfied. I'm afraid that even senior sister Ruan won't be able to protect him this time. The speed at which rumors spread had always been very fast, especially among cultivators. They spread 10 or even 100 times faster among cultivators. Nouveau riches were the easiest to incite jealousy and dissatisfaction. Li Qingshan had only joined the sect for a short period of time, but he had already accomplished a leap that many disciples could never achieve in their entire lives. He seems to be in trouble. That's not strange. Bird woman, let's go to the quartermaster. Little and quickly blended into the crowd. Bird woman. Gu Yenying was stunned for a moment before laughing and following closely behind. The quartermaster was located in the northwest of Wanxiang City. It was like a huge military camp. Not only did it have an independent formation system, it was also filled with sentries and patrols. The camp was filled with cultivators filled with a murderous aura. It was the complete opposite of the overall style of Wanxiang City. Primitive and crude black stone palaces were arranged around the camp without any sense of beauty. The quartermaster led the way at the front. Everyone had to make way and greet him. Occasionally, they would meet one or two quartermasters of the same rank, and they would just nod. Li Qingshan followed behind the logistics officer silently. Suddenly, he felt slightly agitated, but it was not because of the atmosphere here, nor was it because he was worried about whether he would be banished to the army or not. Instead, it was a different emotion, one that was intimate and warm. However, just like how the quartermaster's temperament did not match with Wanxiang City, his current temperament did not match this place either. Apart from the servants and attendants, most of the people here were cultivators who had returned from the battlefield to rest. All of them were battle-hardened and had their own arrogance. This Li Qingshan has already gone through 4 heavenly tribulations. He cultivates the unrestrained heavenly book, which no one has ever cultivated before. With such a huge amount of contribution points, it is only a matter of time before he becomes an inner disciple. With junior sister Ruan's personality, she would not help others cheat. Pai Yangqiu is just a petty person. He is afraid that I will take advantage of the situation to deal with him. However, it is a good move. I am indeed not a gentleman. I will not admit defeat for nothing. However, I am starting to doubt whether it was the right decision to send him to the battlefield. Senior brother. The woman was shocked. Why? Are you afraid that he will... Shut up. He is not a true disciple yet. Even if he really becomes one, I am not afraid of him. Look at your junior brother Lu. His expression seems unnatural, and he is not greeting anyone. What happened? Nothing much. I am just scared. Chapter 1435. The woman was surprised. Junior brother Lu had undergone the 4th heavenly tribulation a long time ago, and he was experienced in battle too. His strength completely surpassed Li Qingshan's. And this was the quartermaster's office. Senior brother Go was watching from above. Was Li Qingshan bold enough to commit murder? Guxing sighed and closed his eyes. Now that he's on the battlefield, his rate of contribution probably won't be any slower than when he was in the 100 Herb Garden. The human realm obviously would not be organizing cultivators to fend off demon folk for free. Instead, they would recruit as many soldiers as they could with the promise of great benefits. Many independent cultivators passed through Myriad Phenomenon City, entering the bloody battlefield in order to secure a future. This was also one of the duties of the quartermaster's office. As they spoke, the quartermaster finally brought Li Qingshan to the bottom of the tower. His heart beat like a drum. The tightly shut door was right before him. If he took another step forward, he would run into the door. If he paused, the consequences would be unpredictable. His life or death would be unpredictable. Like a desperado who had been forced into a dead end, his fear suddenly turned into fury. He powered his Yin spirit with all his might to launch a desperate counterattack. Li Qingshan suddenly stopped, and the soul-stirring killing intent vanished. The quartermaster staggered as if he had punched nothing but air. He had nowhere to release his strength, shaking up his organs. He was drenched in sweat, and his mouth reeked of blood. Suddenly, he looked back. Li Qingshan, you've gone too far. Li Qingshan smiled. Who's gone too far? The faint smile in his eyes caused the quartermaster's heart to tremble, and his anger was instantly extinguished. It was only a joke. If this man really wanted to kill him, he probably would not be able to put up a fight. He wiped away the blood from the corner of his lips. Forget it, I've humiliated myself. Only now do I understand what it means to know someone by reputation. Senior Marshal Brother Chang'e is on the pagoda? Please. Li Qingshan clasped his hands and strode forward, casually pushing open the black stone door. Before he could even make out what was inside, a short, stocky man welcomed him with a smile. Li Qingshan raised his guard. He took half a step back instinctively. As soon as he assumed a defensive posture, his right hand was grabbed firmly. "Senior brother Gu?" Gu Xing patted Li Qingshan's hand lightly. "Welcome, junior brother Li." The woman behind him revealed a strange expression. Gu Xing had never been so warm to her before. The disciple whom she thought to be a lucky disciple was immediately looked at in a new light by another direct disciple. She even treated him as an equal, and he was her superior. Li Qingshan didn't pull his hand out. Instead, he grabbed Gu Xing's hand and shook it hard. "Senior brother, sorry to keep you waiting." This scene was like a victorious reunion. Gu Xingchen was a little surprised, but he seemed to understand. "Junior martial brother Li, do you know why I summoned you here?" Li Qingshan thought for a moment. "Forcefully conscripting me will ruin my cultivation." Gu Xing's smile froze. He didn't expect him to be so direct. She let go of his hand. "Good. I have no enmity with you in the past, so I didn't have to do this." Li Qingshan grinned and said, "I understand. I'm just a chess piece. If others want to eat me, there's no reason to reason with them." Gu Xing said in a low voice, "If you don't fall, you will definitely be on the same level as me." Li Qingshan also said seriously, "Thank you for your kind words, senior martial brother. I will work hard to move forward." "Why don't you let me go? I will repay you generously in the future. What if I refuse?" Even though Gu Xing admired Li Qingshan a little, he gave him face and went down the tower to welcome him personally. But that was also because he didn't want to form a personal grudge with him. The pros and cons were all calculated. This was just a bet, and it wasn't just him. There was really no need to jump out and attract hatred. Li Qingshan shrugged his shoulders. "I won't obediently give up. You don't hate me?" Gu Xing asked curiously. Li Qingshan didn't hate him at all, and it wasn't an act. Otherwise, he would have sensed it. As senior martial brother said, "I have no enmity with you in the past. It's just because of a bet. It's only natural to receive the benefits and bear the disadvantages. What's there to complain about?" Li Qingshan cupped his hands again in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. "I only hope that when senior martial brother has the upper hand, you won't kill me." All of this was just the aftermath of him taking 1,000 green jade lots from Lu Tian. It was part of the bet, so don't take the risk. Gu Xing didn't want to form a personal grudge with him, but how could he be willing to form a grudge with a true disciple? If you put on a look of resentment, do you really have to force others to kill you? Good. Gu Xing's face flashed with a hint of praise. "This bet isn't just about me. Otherwise, I would really want to let you go. But senior martial brother Pai said that you're a stingy person who won't even give up a dark wood lot." Li Qingshan didn't believe him and unceremoniously sold out the mastermind. That bastard. Gu Xing was slightly embarrassed. "I'm doing my duty, so I need to be careful. Sai, if you're careful, you shouldn't gamble. Senior martial brother, don't be too arrogant and make things difficult for me. It'll be easier for us to meet in the future. You can rest assured, our nature sect isn't a demonic sect. We won't go so far as to kill our own sect members. Once you're on the battlefield, we won't care. With your ability, the contribution points you earn on the battlefield won't be any less than in the herb garden. As long as you have the ability to become a true disciple, we'll accept our defeat." Gu Xing patted his chest heroically, but in his heart he said, "Brat, once you're under Chao Tianjiao's command, don't blame me for what she wants to do with you." "Good." Li Qingshan thought, "Only an idiot would believe you. Only an idiot would go to the battlefield. Although it's not worth bearing a grudge, if there's a chance in the future, don't blame me for making fun of you." Why isn't Senior Marshal Sister Wan here yet? The two men looked like they appreciated each other's talents, but they each had their own plans. The female quartermaster was a little stunned. These hypocritical men, on a long bridge between two tall buildings. Gu Yenying glanced in the direction of the quartermaster department and immediately retracted her gaze. I think I see him. This time it's a real person. There's a young spirit cultivator in front of him. I don't dare to look too much. Is he in danger? Little and touched her wrist, where there was a new string of skull beads. Gu Yenying knew that if she said he was in danger, she would immediately prepare for battle, no matter where it was or whether there was a demonic immortal guarding it. Don't worry. At least it's safe for now. He has probably sensed us. Let's wait and see. He met a woman here called Wan Yaozhu, who is also a human sovereign. It seems she will come to help him. At this moment, a 9-colored brilliance swept across the bridge. Gu Yenying and Little and suddenly looked back. Wan Yaozhu felt something in her heart. She looked at them and nodded slightly in greeting. Although the white robes covered their figures and appearances, they seemed to be two extremely beautiful women. Gu Yenying and Little and almost immediately confirmed the woman's identity. They looked at each other. Wan Yaozhu. Flying was not allowed in Wanxiang City, so this was the only way to the quartermaster department. Wan Yaozhu rode the 9-colored deer and arrived at the entrance of the quartermaster department in the blink of an eye. Without any notification, she went straight in and arrived at the Black Tower. Ignoring Li Qingshan, she directly criticized Ge Xing. Senior brother Ge, you've gone too far this time. What a great honor. Ge Xing glanced at Li Qingshan and greeted Wan Yaozhu. Junior Sister Wan, it's been a long time. I know you value this kid very much, but this is not something you can stop. You should give up as soon as possible. Chapter 1436. Wan Yaozhu said righteously, It's fine that you gathered people to gamble, but for a bet, you didn't hesitate to break Wanxiang sect's rules and use your power indiscriminately. Is this something that true disciples should do? Gu Xing raised his hands and leaned back. Junior Marshal Sister, if you want to blame someone, blame Lu Tian. This was all his stupid idea. And that Pai Yangqiu, those two old gamblers, set up a trap for us. We can't let them take advantage of us for nothing. Although he was showing weakness, his words were unyielding. This was related to a large number of green jade lots, and there were several true disciples standing behind him. They couldn't give in, and they didn't need to. If Li Qingshan was a female cultivator and belonged to the Senior Marshal Sisters faction, they could only pray that he would die from Qigong deviation. That conscription order definitely wouldn't take effect, but this kid had offended Chao Tianjiao, and they didn't even need to do anything. How could they let him go? He then pointed at Li Qingshan. Plus, this kid got 1,000 green jade lots from Lu Tian and got a heavenly book as soon as he entered the sect. How can there be no consequences for taking advantage of such a big deal? Li Qingshan looked up at the sky. Fortune lurks in misfortune, misfortune lies in fortune. It was as if he could see the flow of fate. Everything he encountered after coming to Wanxiang sect was intertwined, and it was hard to tell if it was a blessing or a curse. Wan Yaozhu sighed softly and glanced at Li Qingshan. Senior Marshal Brother, please be merciful. He is very important to Herb Garden. Gu Xing said, I'm afraid I can't do anything about it. You can use the original Shun Yu Shu, and he should be happy to return to Herb Garden. Wan Yaozhu raised her head. Then I can only go to the True Inheritance Hall to discuss. The Wanxiang sect was governed by the True Disciples, and the True Inheritance Hall was the core organization. Once there was a major event, or if there was a disagreement between the True Disciples, they would go to the True Inheritance Hall to discuss and decide the final result. To avoid direct conflict, the true disciples were not allowed to fight each other, not even a public duel. This was the most important rule of Wanxiang sect. Lu Tian's bet, to a certain extent, gave the true disciples a chance to fight each other. Junior Marshall's sister, is it worth it? Guxing asked, fighting with them for an inner chamber disciple, even if he had the aptitude to become a true disciple. You are harming the interests of my 100-herb garden. I will naturally fight for what is right. It's useless. Even if you enter the Hall of Inheritance, you won't be able to win. They had the absolute advantage in numbers. Even if Lu Tian and Pai Yangqiu appeared, it would be difficult to salvage the situation. We won't know until we try, Ruan Yaozhu called out to Li Qingshan. Let's return to the 100-herb garden first. Yes, Li Qingshan knew that he owed her a lot of favors, but he was too lazy to be pretentious. He believed that all grudges would be repaid with his own hands. He suddenly stopped in his tracks. He turned around and looked at the black stone hall not far away. A violent aura suddenly rose, and killing intent condensed. It was like a beacon of fire, and it shot into the sky. It was ostentatious and undisguised, like a primordial beast crawling out of a volcano. He clearly felt a trace of heat. On the ancient and huge array, a huge foot stepped out of a blazing and distorted light gate. It's the teleportation hall. The female quartermaster said. Her eyes burned with admiration. He's back. Gu Xing was surprised. Why did he come back early this time? The quartermaster went silent, then cheered. It's eldest senior brother. Eldest senior brother is back. When Li Qingshan heard this word, he felt uncomfortable. It was a natural conflict with him. Even that fool Chu Tian. In his previous life, he was also the eldest senior brother of the Myriad Nature sect. He finally became the eldest senior brother of the Myriad Nature sect, but he only had one junior brother, and he was quickly expelled. Not long ago, he met the eldest senior sister, and it brought him countless troubles. Now that he met the real eldest senior brother, he had to leave first. Just as Li Qingshan was about to leave, Guxing's expression suddenly changed, and he said to Li Qingshan strangely, Junior brother Li, eldest senior brother wants to see you. Eldest senior brother is the commander of the army, and he will come back regularly to rest. This time, he suddenly came back alone, probably because of you. The female quartermaster felt that it was inconceivable. She was also filled with jealousy. Where did this brat get so much face? Li Qingshan, on the other hand, felt uncomfortable, a bad omen of impending trouble. Let's go together, Ruan Yaozhu said. I believe that senior brother Li will uphold justice. Senior brother Li. Li Qingshan suddenly remembered that the name below Lin Xian was indeed surnamed Li at the time. He didn't think much of it. People with the same surname were everywhere. And Li wasn't a rare surname, but now he felt a toothache. Arriving at the teleportation hall, he immediately saw the eldest senior brother, Li Liehua. Or rather, wherever he was, people couldn't help but look at him, and he was being looked up to by a group of cultivators. His face was simple and dignified, like a statue of a god carved by the ancestors. His long hair was like fire, rising and curling. Under the crimson armor, his muscles bulged, but he didn't seem fat. Instead, he seemed to be full of explosive power. He carried a large blade on his back, his arms crossed in front of his chest, and he stood high up on the formation. Behind him was the blazing and distorted teleportation door, reflecting his figure, making him seem even taller. The moment Li Qingshan stepped into the hall, a pair of fiery red eyes focused on him, and the burning feeling became stronger. He felt that if he didn't have the Phoenix bloodline, he would have been roasted to a crisp. He didn't show any weakness, and with just one look, he came to a conclusion. I hate this guy. You are Li Qingshan. Li Liehua smiled and asked. With this smile, that simple face instantly became lively, and the dignified expression became passionate, making people instinctively have a good impression of him. I am. Li Qingshan nodded, but he felt even more annoyed. I've heard about you, and I believe you have the ability to gain merits on the battlefield. But this should be your own idea, and not forced by others. Li Liehua glanced at Gu Xing, smiled embarrassedly and shrunk his neck. Wan Yaozhu's face lit up. Senior brother is indeed reasonable. Chapter 1438. The wind whistled past his ears as Wanxiang City became smaller and smaller. A large hole opened up in Li Qingshan's chest, and raging flames spewed out. His sternum was completely shattered, and his spine could be vaguely seen, as well as his throbbing, undying heart. He looked up at the blue sky and white clouds passing by, but he was strangely calm. Whether it was Li Liehua or Chao Tianjiao, they were merely small obstacles in his path, and he did not view them as strong enemies. He was even below the Xianming Cave Abode's true dragon Ao Xian. Since he could not hand over the Xianming Cave Abode's formation plate, he could only fall out with them. Although he did not have Chao Tianjiao's apprehensions, it was still the same. When asked how many moves would it take to kill him, he was too embarrassed to say 100 or 200 moves. Thus, although it seemed dangerous, it was actually very safe. Of course, Li Liehua's strength was unquestionable. The punch was so powerful that it almost turned him into a phoenix egg. However, this was also because he did not use any innate magical power. Otherwise, it would not be a problem for him to withstand a few moves. The true dragon Ao Xian's strength was similar. For now, it would be difficult to defeat him. He had to wait until the ape demon transformation broke through to the 5th layer and fully recovered his strength. Boom! Waves splashed as he fell into the depths of the sea. Scorching flames gushed out from his chest, directly vaporizing the seawater and causing it to surge upwards. Li Qingshan grinned. This punch would definitely be avenged. He leaped and swam towards the surface. Just as he poked his head out of the water, a hand reached out to him. Under the blue sky, Gu Yanying's smile was hidden under her veil, but her eyes shone. Little brother Qingshan, long time no see. Li Qingshan chuckled and grabbed her hand with one hand. He pressed against the surface of the sea with the other and leaped out. A white figure flashed, and leaped into his arms. Li Qingshan revealed a gentle smile and rubbed her head. I knew you were nearby. Not seeing Luo Ho Xiaoming, he frowned. Where's Little Ming? Little and said he was covering our retreat and was captured by a dragon. Understood. Don't worry, we'll save him right away. Li Qingshan immediately changed his original plan. He was prepared to not wait for his strength to fully recover, but before he was sent to the army, he had to rescue Luo Ho Xiaoming and take down the mysterious underworld cave at the same time. I'll let that damned Li Liehua see if I'm worthy or not. I'm not alone right now. At this time, Wan Yaozhu came over on a deer and stopped far away on the sea. A look of surprise appeared on his face. He still remembered them. Li Qingshan let go of Little and cupped one hand in the other before his chest. Senior Sister Wan, just now, thank you. Wan Yaozhu wanted to say something, but hesitated. The 9-colored deer asked, Boy, who are they? Li Qingshan said calmly, family and friends. Wan Yaozhu smiled and nodded. I see. Hello. Gu Yenying and Little and looked at each other and pulled down their scarves. Hello, Senior Sister Wan. Wan Yaozhu looked deeply at Li Qingshan. Seeing that he had no intention of introducing them, she wanted to leave. Just as he was about to leave, he asked, How are your injuries? It's okay. You know that my body has always been very good. Li Qingshan patted his chest. His injuries were already gradually healing. Sigh, you shouldn't have fought with him head on. You know my temperament. Rather than holding my breath, it's better to take a punch. It's more satisfying. Wan Yaozhu's eyes looked at the three of them. She seemed to heave a sigh of relief. Then she said, I'm going back to the 100 Herb Garden. She then left on the deer. The tranquil sea reflected the blue sky and white clouds, and a white deer. It was a girl, her dress fluttering in the wind. She looked a little lonely. Li Qingshan suddenly said, Senior sister, I have a presumptuous request. Wan Yaozhu turned her head. Her attitude was still calm, but it seemed to be a little distant. Junior brother, I'm afraid I can't help you this time. I haven't said what it is. Speak. I want to ask you to help me buy some time. Li Qingshan asked earnestly. He couldn't rush to the cave of Xianming and fight to the death with true dragon Ao Xian right now. He needed some time to prepare, since the enlistment order had to be discussed in the Hall of Direct Teachings. It had to go through a set of procedures. It would definitely take a lot of time. That was the time. Wan Yaozhu couldn't help but look at Gu Yenying and Little and again. Was he going to reunite with them before he left? Gu Yenying smiled, but didn't say anything. Little and was expressionless. The 9-colored deer said, Hey kid, don't push your luck. We've already helped you enough. We don't owe you any more. Li Qingshan said, That's why I said it's a presumptuous request. But it's really important to me. I want to go to the cave of Xianming. I have to prepare, but I can't help you. Wan Yaozhu interrupted. As a true disciple, she couldn't help him deal with the current eldest senior brother's mount, even if this eldest senior brother had already reincarnated. She seemed to be a little too excited. She stroked the hair on the side of her face. Even if I want to help you, I'm not Ao Xian's match. I'm not good at fighting. Of course I know that. I won't make things difficult for you. I just need a little time. But if it really can't be done, then forget it. Li Qingshan sniggered. Perhaps Ao Xian will cry and beg to be my mount when he sees me. I'll ride a true dragon into the battlefield. Let's see what Li Liehua's expression will be like. This joke made Wan Yaozhu smile, reluctantly. He was definitely going to challenge the Chua dragon with these two girls because they were his family and companions. He had never thought of asking her for any big help. He definitely wouldn't make her feel the slightest bit uncomfortable. She was just a senior sister. And the truth was like that. They weren't moved at all, even if they had to go through fire and water with him to challenge an undefeatable enemy. But she was even evading such a small matter. She wanted to persuade him not to rush to the Xianming cave abode. The true dragon, Ao Xian, wasn't that easy to deal with. But when the words reached her mouth, she couldn't say a single word. She could only nod. I understand. I'll ask the True Inheritance Hall to discuss it. It should be able to delay it for about 10 days to half a month. You're on your own. Watching Wan Yaozhu disappear into the horizon, Gu Yenying teased, Stop looking. She's gone. You've only been in the Myriad Appearance sect for a short time. I really don't know what to say about you. Don't blame us for ruining your plans. Li Qingshan said suspiciously. You didn't do it on purpose, did you? You really don't know what's good for you. Look at how you were sent flying by a punch. You don't know what's good for you. We quickly came to save you. Li Qingshan was a little embarrassed. Gu Yenying changed the topic. That's right. We did it on purpose. Li Qingshan rolled his eyes. Then he smiled. It's fine. This is pretty good. She's good, but not as good as me. Little and had a serious expression. She didn't care how many women were by his side. She only cared that when he was in danger, she wasn't the one standing by his side. Li Qingshan picked her up again and laughed. Of course, my little N is the best in the world. Little N's laughter was like a silver bell. Her smile was sweet and innocent. You too. Gu Yenying face-bombed. They didn't look like two powerful cultivators at all. Ha, if you're envious, I can hug you too. Li Qingshan opened his arms and pounced on her. Forget it. Gu Yenying's figure flashed and appeared behind him. How is it? Have you decided on how to deal with that dragon? Chapter 1439. Li Qingshan rubbed his chin and thought, the most important thing right now is to confirm Little Ming's safety. It's best if we can save him. The cave is secondary. Gu Yenying said solemnly, Lin Xian is the eldest senior brother of the Wanxiang sect. It won't be so easy to enter his cave. Don't worry, I've already obtained the formation disc for the Xianming cave. Li Qingshan smiled smugly and pointed at the wound on his chest. I took this punch for this. He also had a trump card, which was the Yin Demon. With these two conditions, it was definitely possible to sneak into the Xianming cave, as expected of Li Qingshan. Gu Yenying praised and asked, Can you control the protective formation? No, it's just a key. Li Qingshan was also slightly regretful. Otherwise, things would be much simpler. Then can't we just change the lock? Little and looked towards Gu Yenying. Gu Yenying's eyes lit up. That's right, that dragon doesn't seem to be very smart. I can try to lure him out. If you can take the chance to take control of the cave, then we'll have the geographical advantage and be almost undefeatable. Li Qingshan said in surprise, You want to lure him out? That's a true dragon that has gone through 5 heavenly tribulations. Don't worry, he won't catch up to me so easily. Gu Yenying's face was full of confidence. In the lightning of the 4th heavenly tribulation, she had completely merged with the feather of mixed heaven and was no longer a human or an eagle. She was slowly transforming into a true Kuanpang, which was enough to make up for the difference in cultivation. You don't need to be faster than that dragon. When you forcefully took over the Xianming cave, he will definitely sense it and want to come back to defend. I can block him a bit more and buy you some time. Li Qingshan smiled. Can you block him? Don't lose another one before you even save one. Little and smiled, but did not say anything. The 4th heavenly tribulation was equally important to her. She had already cultivated the 4th layer of the path of white bone and great beauty and reached the Sutua river fruit of the 4 Arhut fruits. It condensed into the white bone jade body. The joints all over his body started to condense into white bone relics, and at the same time, his body chakra was connected. All kinds of white bone secret treasures were refined by her. Although he had squandered all his savings, his strength had increased by a huge level. Very good. Li Qingshan heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, I didn't stay idle. With their help, he felt more confident. After discussing with them for a while, he told them to leave this place and find a place to cultivate. He then returned to Wanxiang City. Walking on the road, everyone glanced at him. Li Qingshan's name had already spread throughout the Wanxiang sect due to the 30-year bet with the direct disciples, as well as the 30-year challenge with Chao Tianjiao. Li Liao's punch had made him famous. A disciple unexpectedly became enemies with the eldest senior apprentice and the eldest senior sister of the Wanxiang sect at the same time. In front of them, even the true disciple had to bow down, but he met a ghoul. Chaotic life gambling Denver. Kid, I really don't know if I should call you crazy or praise you for your bravery. Lu Tian paced back and forth while playing with the sieve. At the same time, he examined Li Qingshan from head to toe with a mocking expression. Li Qingshan grinned. Either is fine. Why are you looking for me? Are you going to help me collect your corpse? Lu Tian shouted. This dark horse was about to become a dead horse, his bet of 1,000 green jade lots, and his gambling debt of 1,000 green jade lots, adding up to a total of 2,000 green jade lots, had all gone down the drain. Even he felt extremely pained. Pai Yangqiu had probably received the news. He hurried over and grumbled, "Junior apprentice brother, you're really something. That cave abode wasn't yours in the first place, and you couldn't swallow it in such a short period of time. You should just give it to eldest senior apprentice brother to avoid endless troubles. Now, not only are you digging your own grave, he will definitely blame me. Do you think you can run away?" Lutian sighed. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have made the bet with you in the first place." This bet made him depressed to the extreme. He won for nothing, lost for nothing, and was even forcefully tied to this brat. Originally, cultivating in the Wanxiang sect would not have so many life-threatening dangers. However, this kid was too good at courting death. He couldn't even stop him. Suddenly, he was furious and grabbed Li Qingshan's neck. "Give me back my green jade lots." Faced with the two direct disciples' grumbling and anger, anyone else would have been scared witless. However, Li Qingshan laughed loudly. Pai Yangqiu was slightly startled. Lu Tian's eyes were full of meaning, but his anger seemed to be only on the surface. "Senior apprentice brothers, you two are so pitiful. I have a plan that can ensure you get your own green jade lots." Pai Yangqiu was surprised. "We don't have a plan. What plan do you have?" Li Qingshan glanced at him. "Let go." Lutian let go and said, "Interesting." Li Qingshan straightened his clothes. "How much do you think the things that eldest senior apprentice brother Lin left behind in the cave are worth?" Pai Yangqiu said, "It's hard to estimate. Is it enough to pay off the debt?" "It's definitely enough." Lu Tian had already guessed Li Qingshan's thoughts. He was excited. This was really interesting. This bet was getting crazier. Li Qingshan said, "I plan to take down the cave before I am sent to the army. If I die in battle, not only will I pay senior apprentice brother Qingla's debt, but I will also pay senior apprentice brother Pai's share. What do you think?" Pai Yangqiu said, "Junior apprentice brother, we can't fight Ao Xian directly." Li Qingshan said, "I didn't ask you to fight him." Lu Tian said, "Then what do you want?" "Senior apprentice sister Wan will ask the direct disciples to review my enlistment order. Senior apprentice brothers, please help her and buy me some time. Also, lend me 2,000 green jade, lots, 1,000 each." "Fair enough." Pai Yangqiu was stunned. He said seriously, "You're crazy." If 2,000 green jade lots were added to the bet, then this bet would have expanded to an unbelievable extent. Coupled with the bet with Gexing and the other true disciples, the bet was approaching the threshold of 10,000 green jade lots. Ordinary small sects wouldn't be able to accumulate so many resources even after 10,000 years. Li Qingshan laughed. "No, this is called raising the stakes. Now, I only have one question. Are you guys betting or not?" Pai Yangqiu said suspiciously, "You're not going to run away with some stuff, are you?" Li Qingshan looked straight at him. His eyes were sharp and clear. "I'm sorry, I misspoke." Lu Tian played with the sieve. "If we don't bet, are you still going to the cave?" "Of course, I have to go. Before I go to the battlefield, I want to make a decision." Lu Tian licked his lips and threw out 1,000 green jade lots. "All right, I'll bet." In order to break free from this trap, he kept raising the stakes until his feet were in the mud and his eyes were red. It was not a gamble if one's heart was beating fast and his blood was pumping. Li Qingshan looked at Pai Yangqiu. "What about you, senior brother Pai?" Pai Yangqiu pondered for a long time before letting out a long sigh. At this point, what else is there to say? 30 years is too long. I want to see the results immediately. He dared to bet with his life, so he probably had some confidence in winning. A bet that looked like it was going to fail suddenly had a chance to turn the tables. Furthermore, it was an immediate result. As a gambler, how could he be willing to admit defeat? Li Qingshan accepted another 1,000 green jade lots. He cupped his fists and left Random Life Gambling House, heading straight for the sky. Lu Tian and Pai Yangqiu stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and watched Li Qingshan's figure disappear into the intersecting streets. Pai Yangqiu could not help but ask, "Hey, we didn't bet wrong, right?" Lu Tian said, "Who knows until the last moment? Don't you think it's a wonderful feeling? After this bet, I'll quit gambling." The moment Li Qingshan stepped into the sky, he was immediately summoned by Spirit Venerable Gui Hai. Indeed, he did not miss a single one. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai said, "I've already prepared what you want. It's worth 2,200 green jade lots." That happened to be all of Li Qingshan's current assets. Li Qingshan grinned and did not say anything else. He browsed through it. The items included the Xianming array's formation diagram was extremely complicated and profound. It could save him time deducing and allow him to control the Xianming cave abode at the fastest speed possible. 5 elemental divine escape art and illusion fiend escape art. The former's focus was on unobstructed rapid flight, while the latter's focus was on undetected changes and concealment. They complemented each other and complemented each other. This was the basic guarantee for him to infiltrate the Xianming cave abode. Eldest senior brother Lin Xian's combat records. As a mount, true dragon Ao Xian occupied a very important position. Magical powers, dharma spells, and combat methods were all recorded. One could even deduce and analyze its temperament. Then he could use this secret scroll of inner demons. It recorded the most mysterious and unfathomable inner demons' secret scroll. It could be used to guard against inner demons, and it could also be used to trigger the enemy's inner demons. All of these only took up a very small space. The most extensive ones were the teachings of the various sects that believed in Mahesvara Demon Lord. They were known by the Buddhists as the ash-smeared heretical path. Their thoughts were abnormally profound, but it was indescribably strange. The content was all-encompassing, but it was also contradictory. There were many Dharma spells recorded, and they were definitely different from ordinary Dharma spells. There was charm, concealment, transformation, destruction, and so on. For example, the sexual strength sex dual cultivation method, the Mercury sex alchemy technique, the beast master sex path of extraordinary movement, and the scripture sex living sacrifice ceremony to invite a god to possess them. There was nothing that could not be imagined. If he could master all of these, not only would it be greatly beneficial to his cultivation, but the Freedom Sutra would also be able to unleash extraordinary power. Li Qingshan did not hesitate to toss out all the green jade lots. "I'll buy them." He then asked, "Why are you helping me?" "This is my duty." Spirit Sovereign Guihai left without looking back. A Kuan Peng that had inherited the chaotic heaven feather, and the successor of the white bone bodhisattva naturally did not escape his eyes. Even if he did not know anything about divination and prophecy, some things were gradually becoming clear, revealing shocking information. He did not dare to make an enemy of it, much less befriend it. A single misstep could lead to eternal damnation. A mere spirit turtle that had yet to become an immortal was unable to bear any consequences. He could only wait and see, go with the flow, and continue observing to gather more information before making a judgment. Chapter 1440. Satisfied, Li Qingshan descended from the sky. The staff members who were once very friendly to him now avoided him as if he was the plague. They waited until he was far away before whispering to each other. However, they did not know how sharp his eyes and ears were. He heard every word they said, treating him as if he was already dead. Li Qingshan smiled. He did not blame them for being snobbish. Other than true disciples like Lu Tian and Pai Yangqiu, no one in the myriad appearance sect would dare to associate with him. However, he had only left for a few days when he realized that he was wrong. A male cultivator was blocking the entrance. The moment he appeared, he looked over as if he had been waiting for Shen Lian. Li Qingshan felt that it was a little strange. This cultivator's appearance and figure were unusually ordinary. It was not the kind of ordinary that could not be found in a crowd. Instead, it was the average appearance of all the people in the crowd, erasing all the special characteristics. Actually, if one looked closely, he was actually quite handsome. The badge on his chest showed that he was a chamber disciple. However, this kind of ordinary in-soul cultivator was especially strange. Moreover, the gaze he gave Shen Lian seemed to be filled with resentment. Li Qingshan stopped. "What are you looking at?" Unfortunately, the other party did not reply with "What's wrong with looking at you," making him feel slightly disappointed. "Li Qingshan, to think that you would have such a day." The ordinary face twisted into a somewhat familiar expression of resentment. The tone of the voice was also somewhat familiar. A light flashed in Li Qingshan's mind. "Don't speak, let me think. You are Shen Yishu. Ha! How did you become like this? You are much uglier than before." Shen Yishu looked as if he had been stabbed by a knife. His expression became even more twisted. "Li Qingshan, you destroyed my body. I will not live under the same sky as you." This body was not obtained through possession. The in-soul state was extremely unstable. There was simply no time to find a suitable person to possess. Moreover, even if he was lucky enough to find one, not only would it go against human morals, there would also be significant side effects. This was the flying insect that the myriad appearance sect's spiritual beast garden specially bred. It was usually in the form of an insect. As long as a secret technique was used, it would quickly grow into a human form. Their bones and blood vessels were no different from those of mortals. It was just that they were born without souls. They were specially cultivated to be possessed by cultivators whose bodies had been destroyed. However, horseshoe insects were only divided into males and females. Everything else about them was extremely ordinary. They had no talent or flaws, so they could adapt to the needs of most cultivators. Absolutely irreconcilable. Li Qingshan put his hands on his waist. "Come and bite me." Shen Yishu was no match for Li Qingshan, and he had yet to fully adapt to his new body. On the other hand, Li Qingshan had gone through 4 heavenly tribulations. Under such circumstances, there was even less hope for him. He sneered and said, "Humph, you won't be arrogant for long. I will wait for the news of your death in the 100-herb garden." Just as he finished speaking, a large hand enveloped him. In an instant, it seemed as if it could blot out the sky and cover the earth. By the time he came back to his senses, he was already tightly gripped by the throat. He was lifted from the ground. Li Qingshan pulled him in front of him and whispered in his ear, "What did you say? Please say it again." Shen Yishu was shocked to the extreme. In his eyes, half of Li Qingshan's face suddenly became as malevolent as a beast's. His eyes faintly revealed a bloodthirsty red glow. How could he say anything? He was incomparably regretful. Li Qingshan scratched his head. "Then I'm leaving." Before he finished speaking, Wan Yaozhu had already floated away. Li Qingshan sighed with a smile and left the 100-herb garden in the opposite direction. All he saw was a figure flying over from the surface of the sea. Even if he did his best to hide his aura, how could he avoid his senses? It was Shun Yushu. Ah, you really know how to make time. He had the heart to teach him a lesson again, but after thinking about it, he decided not to be so senseless. This was also good. The 100-herb garden would immediately return to its original state, as if he had never come. Shun Yushu saw Li Qingshan in the distance and suddenly stopped. He saw Li Qingshan soar into the sky, whistling through the clouds. After hesitating for a long time, he dared to continue forward. Arriving at the shore of the island, he tidied up his clothes. Looking at this incomparably familiar scenery, his heart was filled with confidence. I, Shin Yushu, have returned. He originally wanted to wait for Wan Yaozhu to personally invite him, but in the end, he couldn't bear it and urgently came to fill this vacancy. This job was really too important to him. Wan Yaozhu, without Li Qingshan, who else can you use? You still have to rely on me, Shun Yushu. You must be very regretful right now. In the 100-herb cave, Wan Yaozhu quietly meditated. Beside her, 100 flowers bloomed, their fragrance permeating the entire cave. The 9-colored deer knew that this was a sign that her mood was not calm and her magic power was dissipating. Finally, that hateful Li Qingshan was chased out. However, his existence was like a lingering fragrance. Hopefully, it would fade with time. He cautiously said, Yaozhu, that Shin Yushu wants to come in. Chapter 1441. The sky was high, and the sea was wide. Li Qingshan was flying over the vast sea. In less than a month, it was too tight. It was almost impossible for him to make sufficient preparations. If he had a few years to cultivate slowly, he could reach the 5th tier of the ape demon transformation and recover all his strength. Then, he could sort out the techniques of the various sects that worshipped the vast freedom heavenly demon lord. His cultivation would definitely increase tremendously. It was just a true dragon that had passed the heavens tribulation 5 times. How hard could it be to deal with? Moreover, after becoming a monster monarch, he should have obtained at least 5 new special abilities. However, they were all obstructed due to various reasons. Although it was a talent, it took time for a bird to learn how to fly. If he could slowly comprehend it, it was not impossible to comprehend it. However, the problem was that he did not have enough time. It would be great if he could comprehend 1 or 2 special abilities in a month. It was almost impossible to use them as he wished. Moreover, it was still unknown what the effects of the new special abilities would be. It would not be strange if he could comprehend them after so much effort to defeat Ao Xian. He had comprehended many divine abilities, but not every one of them could be used in every battle. He might as well use the time to practice the spiritual arts related to the Freedom Heavenly Book. At least he would have a clear goal. Fate was like this. It would not wait until you were fully prepared before giving you a test. Instead, it would hit you head-on. Li Qingshan took a deep breath and threw all these thoughts to the back of his head. He focused all his attention on what he should do. He was thinking about how he could use them to their fullest potential to overcome this obstacle. First, he browsed through First Senior Brother Lin Xian's battle records. There were no pictures, only words. However, Lin Xian's prowess in the past was still reflected in his words. He was worthy of being called undefeated in every battle. Undefeated in every battle. These 8 words were fascinating. The true dragon, heavenly book in his hands, was able to transform into countless techniques. He had defeated and killed countless strong enemies on the battlefield. He was not only powerful, he had the ability to lead. He was wise and decisive. He was able to convince others. The armies outside of the nature sect were also willing to follow his orders. He was like a different person from the Lin Xian that Li Qingshan knew, not to mention the clown Chu Tian. Although it might be an exaggeration, it was definitely not groundless. At the very least, compared to Li Liehua and Chao Tianjiao, he was more deserving of the title of eldest senior brother. However, the great Tao was merciless. If one could not become an immortal, once their time was up, even if they were a hero, they would not be the same as before, even if they were reincarnated. In all of Lin Xian's deeds, all of them had Ao Xian's shadow in them, and they even had the battle record of fighting 5 demon emperors alone. Even though it was just a bitter battle that ended with Lin Xian leading the rescue team, Li Qingshan's mood became even more solemn after he finished reading it. At least for now, this true dragon was still a powerful enemy that he could not defeat. The aura of death became more intense, and the fighting spirit in his heart burned like fire. He didn't even notice it himself. He subconsciously pursed his lips and bulged his eyes, a stubborn expression on his face. He was like a stubborn bull. At that moment, a verdant island appeared on the surface of the sea. It happened to be in between Wanxiang City and the Xianming Cave abode. It was thousands of miles away from both of them. Li Qingshan descended from the skies. Without saying much, he shared the information he obtained with Gu Yenying and Little, and we don't have much time. Let's limit it to 15 days. By then, I'll try to find Little Ming and prepare to fight Ao Xian to the death. Gu Yenying replied, "Understood," Little and nodded silently. Thus, Li Qingshan said nothing more and turned to head into the depths of the island. He immediately began cultivating. The first was the 5 elements divine escape. In the depths of the dense forest, a huge tree blocked the path. It was unknown how long it had been growing on this island. It would probably require dozens of people to encircle it. Up close, it looked like a wall. Li Qingshan walked over and entered the wooden wall silently. The small world within his body was still in a semi-chaotic state. Breathing in and out, it expanded and contracted continuously. Mastering one technique would lead to mastering all techniques. For an ordinary cultivator, it would take at least a few years for them to cultivate the 5 elements divine escape technique to the initial mastery level. However, for him, who had just mastered the first stage of the Qilin longevity strategy, wood escape was no longer difficult. Just like that, he walked through the dense forest, passing through the trees until a huge mountain blocked his path. He smiled and leaped into the mountain rocks like a carp leaping into the dragon's gate. In an instant, he turned into a beam of light and traveled through the mountains. This was a true escape technique. Not only was there no obstruction, but he could also use the momentum to travel. Earth escape was as easy as breathing for him. There were many metals in the mountains, so the obstruction was greater than that of rocks. However, it was not a difficult task. Using the escape technique, he came to the depths of the mountain. Suddenly, he sped down. Hot air gradually surged up, and a boundless sea of fire suddenly rushed toward him. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. Oh, so this is a dormant volcano to begin with. The earth-fiendish magnetism interfered with the spell, and the beam of light flickered. The 5 elements divine escape became ineffective at times, and it was instantly swallowed by the sea of fire. Among the 5 elements divine escape techniques, cultivating fire escape was the most dangerous. At most, one would be buried alive if they used earth escape. At most, they would be drowned in water if they used water escape. It was not fatal for cultivators, but it was not so good to be burned by fire. Usually one had to practice in a cauldron first and find friends and family to watch over them, so that they could retract the flames at any time. Even so, it was very easy for them to get injured or even die. Cultivators like Li Qingshan, cultivating in earth fire right from the start, were simply unheard of. Not only was the fire poison cruel here, but there was also the influence of the earth fiendish magnetism. Moreover, lava was not pure fire.